Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. It's Draxyr. Feels strange to use that intro again. It's been a while. What we're going to be doing today is a comprehensive analysis of the 2018 World Finals between Fnatic and Invictus Gaming. Now, how's this going to work? What are we doing here? So, initially my plan was to evaluate the micro of the games, the mechanical errors, things that stood out as mechanical prowess, and then break off into the second part, which was a macro analysis, which is the typical topic of review in a VOD review like this. But then I thought about it, I said, the mechanics, it's pretty easy to see, even for, your average player, and kind of explain themselves. For example, some notable ones come to mind: rookie proto belt W's and misses caps, which makes the kill a little bit more iffy. In the top lane, Shy missed an ultimate that caused him to flash away from Bwipo's execute. Things like that stood out throughout the entire series and really this entire Worlds. I remember there was a Bwipo quote, I think. He just said that players this World seem to be playing worse. And generally when professional players or high elo players say that a player is playing worse, or even like when the population evaluates a player's skill level, right? What's the first thing they jump to? It's not necessarily how good they are at reading the map or their macro. The first thing that people jump to is their mechanical prowess, their ability to pull off cool mechanical plays, or even just mechanical plays in general on a very consistent basis. And it is true that this Worlds, at least from what I've watched, I didn't watch much of the past Worlds. Perhaps it's just a confirmation bias kind of thing. But there were a lot of mechanical mistakes every single game between every single team. So kind of strange that it is that way. But like I said, I've decided not to go too much in depth into micro. I'll point it out here and there if I see it and we have time. But I'll just be focusing on the macro analysis because I think it's more important and probably uses our time better. So how are we going to break this down? First of all, it's 3 games, right? Spoiler alert, it's 3-0. If you don't know that already, then you shouldn't be watching this video. But 3-0 Invictus Gaming, so that means we're going to be evaluating each game into these parts, okay? We're going to go through Champ Select, or like pick and ban phase. Now, pick and ban, the act of pick and ban is actually my weakest part of my macro in terms of analysis. I'm not actually super great at pick ban myself. I know obviously the basics and the fundamentals of it, but doing it's very difficult. Understanding what to ban and what order and what champions and what order, it's difficult to do. It's actually like an entire mini game of itself where the coaches kind of face off in a round of fisticuffs. But what I am good at is analyzing it after everything has been locked in. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something I like to call archetypal analysis between each of the matchups: top, jungle, mid, etc. And then after we do the archetypal analysis, where we kind of frame what should be happening in the game to come, what should be occurring, what we're expecting to see. And then we're going to go through the game and see the differences in perfect optimal execution based on my archetypal analysis and what actually happens in the game. And I'll tell a little bit of why the differences are there, but mostly we'll be focusing on the innate macro therein. All right, so I'm excited. That was actually longer of an intro than I expected, but should be fine. So game 1 is currently right in front of us. I'm going to mute the audio. It's kind of distracting to have the casters talk in the background while I'm talking. So let's begin. So without even starting the video, we have the rosters locked, okay? We have Bwipo on Urgot, yada yada. I don't have to read it off. I'm not casting this game. Okay, so let's start from top and work our way to the bottom. Sweet. So Urgot into Sion is a pretty classic matchup. Urgot, obviously, with the Summoner Spellbook being like a big pick at Worlds and in the past couple of patches in general, people discovered that Spellbook, which is a very strong early and mid-game summoner, keystone, makes Urgot and complements his strength so well, it made him into a meta pick. And then add on the fact that he's a counter to a lot of the meta champions that are played. And if not a counter, like does decently well into everything that's played, you have obviously an S tier competitive pick. So we have Urgot, his range champion, yada yada, has an execute, great for competitive play. He's against Sion, and this is a pretty classic archetypal version of just anti-tank into tank. And while Urgot isn't necessarily as anti-tank as like a Conqueror champion or something along those lines, or something that has an insane way to deal with tanks, something that comes to mind would be like late game AD carries, like their fundamental archetype is based around it. Urgot does well, and that's because of the tools he has available. In the early game, tanks are not tanks, by the way. Tanks are very squishy in the early game. There's a couple of exceptions that come to mind, like Sion is pretty decent of the tanks, but if you think about like Maokai right now, this is one of the reasons why Maokai's not played is because he's actually just so squishy in the early game. Like tanks are just not tanky, and one of the key times you can really pressure tanks is in the early game before they get into that big beef ball of health, armor, and MR. You can't touch them anymore, at least in any meaningful way. That's why having a champion like Urgot, who does really well in the early game, has ranged. He has his Q poke, which is on an 8-second cooldown, I believe. He has his W for all-ins, his E, things like that. Complete lane priority. It's a good thing. So Urgot into Sion, classic, into a tank matchup should be really good for Bwipo. He should have a CS lead. He should be pressuring off the Sion from waves, XP even if he's good enough. He should be looking for pressure with Draxyr because he's going to have complete lane prio. Post 6 though, this is something that I'm going to mention a lot. There's a factor that not a lot of players think about when they talk about champion strengths, right? It doesn't matter, right, if you have even a lot of lane prio. If your champion doesn't have an innate way to join a fight a decent distance away. I remember I was playing a game as Camille versus Yasuo in the top lane, and we moved at roughly around the same time, but because I'm Camille and he's Yasuo, I got to hookshot over like 2 walls and get into a fight that's half a map away, and he's busy running around trying to get to the fight. And that's something we have to mention here. So Sion post 6 has the ability to ult into a fight that's half a map away, and Urgot just doesn't have that capability. Teleport doesn't really, fulfill the same function as that. So something to keep in mind. But anyway, pretty standard here. One important part of archetype analysis is not just individual archetype analysis, which is like, okay, what happens in Urgot versus Sion? It's also how does it impact the total count? So much like people count like advantages, we're going to count advantages in archetypal analysis. So this is a +1. We're going to +1 for Fnatic, okay? Because Urgot is a beneficial matchup. So now we're going to go to the second matchup. And this is actually where one of my bigger specialty lies, is because I'm a Camille main. And Camille jungle is something I've played a lot and I understand almost everything about. And Draxyr picks Lee Sin into Camille. So this is an interesting one. 2 early game archetype champions, right? However, Camille is spec'd into early game far more than Lee Sin is. And what does that mean, spec'd into? Every champion has a power budget that, now I'm thinking about it, since I might as well do stream of consciousness, I don't really have a huge script to follow. We're going to be defining a lot of things in this specific champ select, and I'm going to use those terms in second and third without defining them. So this is one of them. Power budget, what does it mean? So when Riot's game design team comes together to make a champion, right, they have a number. It's not a literal number, but it's like an amount in the back of their head that is the total amount of skill points, essentially, if you think about it in an RPG sense, that they can give to a champion. So when you make an RPG character, you can't just put 100 into dexterity and intelligence and strength. That'd be the most OP character ever, right? So you have a power budget, and everyone gets a power budget, and they get to put all of their stats and spec into what they want. Ooh, if you want like a bard, then you want to put points into intelligence and music and things like that. If you want a warrior, you want strength and health and things like that. So champions are no different. Otherwise, everything would be overpowered, or nothing would be overpowered, like Dota. The idea here is every champion has a power budget, and they're spec'd into different things. So a champion, for example, like Vayne, for the longest time, was a late game or mid-late game spec'd champion. She didn't have early game power budget tools because you can't be strong at all points. However, there are some exceptions. We call those S-tier champions. S-tier champions are strong at all points with very few weaknesses. And, that's why that's S-tier, and that's why usually they get nerfed after a certain amount of time. Camille has all of her points, in jungle at least. Top lane functions completely differently. That's another topic. It's really interesting how changing the role affects the champion that much. But for jungle, she has all of her points put into early game. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, she's okay mid-late game. She has decent damage. She's still Camille. She has engage. She has, her ultimate, which catches people. Like, not a bad champion. The thing is with Camille jungle, Camille's a champion that to do all of those things in the mid-late game, she has to be in melee range of the enemy team, right? And top lane Camille generally doesn't have a huge problem with that because top lane Camille has more gold. And why do I say that? Well, first of all, lane minions are a more consistent form of income, right? Generally, top lane Camille isn't dying that much, right? She's not dying to ganks, and hopefully she's not getting solo killed. So she's picking up kills here and there with her kit, and she's going to get enough gold to hit the Sterax, to hit the Triforce in
a good amount of time. It's really important that I say a good amount of time, because no matter what you build as an off-tank champion, right? If you're building items like Sterak's or Triforce, to make you a tanky champion as an off-tank, you have to hit those items by a certain amount. All of you have played with that Riven or with that Camille or with that, you know, Sinzao or something that builds like the Triforce Sterak's, and they build it at like 30 minutes. They're going to die like that because the timing is all wrong, even though they have the same items. But if you have Triforce Sterak's at like 15 minutes, no one's going to be able to kill you. You're going to be as tanky as that Scion in this game. So timing is really important. What does Jungle Camille have to build that top lane Camille doesn't? And that answer is Warrior. Warrior is 2,000 something gold that delays those timings of those items, which means that even when she gets those items, she's not nearly as tanky as she would be as top lane, because top lane gets those items faster with more income and without the need to build Warrior. And don't jump to the conclusion that suddenly Camille Jungle should go straight for those items, because she pretty much needs Warrior. She needs it pretty badly for that early game power spike, as a jungler does. So like I said, jungle completely changes Camille. So early game spec, sorry for the tangent. Broxa, right, picks Lee Sin into that. Now Lee Sin has generally been known as like an early game champion, right? However, what he does have that Camille doesn't is a mid game. So if Camille does not get ahead, right? If she does not get any kills, she's 0-0-0, God forbid 0-1 or more, right? She does not have a mid game, because she's too squishy and doesn't do enough damage, so she supplies nothing to her team. Like just an ultimate, but what she's gonna die instantly. So she has to get some kind of lead. But Lee Sin, if he goes 0-0-0 and farms well, usually with Tiamat, he has a mid game to speak of. Generally, his fall off doesn't start until late game. And I know that's a whole topic. We're not going to go over how Lee Sin falls off in the late game or what that means. But generally, that's the accepted theory, is that early game he's strong, mid game he's fine, and late game he falls off. So in this matchup, right, it's not actually an idea of who as a champion is stronger, because these two champions are generally on the same tier list. If champions were to, you know, determine S, A, B, these two champions would probably just be a solid A. They're not going to be S tier, because S tier champions are strong at all points in the game, and I've just mentioned weaknesses with these two champions at certain parts of the game. But they're A tier. They're usually a decent pick. One thing I forgot to mention is Camille. Why people say Camille has a late game is because when she's 6 items, she's just as strong as a top lane Camille 6 items. But remember, she's going to hit those 6 items way later. Way later. So it's not usually something you want to consider. So that's the jungle matchup is, can Camille find something in the early game? If yes, she's good to go. When I say good to go, I don't mean she's winning. She gets like 1 kill, I think, which happens in this game. She's about even with the Lee Sin. About even. Her champion is a bit better, like without her ultimate. Obviously, Hookshot is stronger than anything Lee Sin has available except for his kick. But 1 kill usually equalizes the power level in skirmishes and team fights. And then more than that, obviously, is going to snowball in Camille's favor. Now, obviously, to balance that out, Camille has the tools to become stronger than the Lee Sin. She has the tools to get leads. That's why she's an A tier pick. If she had no tools and had only early game, she'd be a pretty bad champion. Yeah, and so if Lee Sin survives and gets a lead even, or stays even, he's good to go and wins. Now, that's that matchup. Really complicated stuff. There's more to it, but that's the basic idea. Now, Aurelia versus Lissandra. This is the reason why Fnatic lost this game. There were multiple points where Caps had the wave shoving towards Rookie. And that itself is not a bad thing, right? Generally, what that means is you have wave prio, you have wave pressure, you're going to shove in, you're going to have a window when the wave crashes. But Caps was in such a horrible point with the work of Rookie and Ning, with vision control and the threat of a gank, he actually got zoned out of his own wave when the wave was shoving. Now, the vast majority of time, think about this when you're playing in your games. When you get frozen by your enemy, even though they're probably not doing it correctly, what's the wave position? You can take a couple seconds to think about that. What does the wave look like when you're getting frozen out? Most of the time. Give me a couple seconds. The wave usually is pushing towards you. So I'll give you an example for the top lane, right? You just pushed in the wave, but you messed it up a little bit. So now there's like 2 minions left, and they're currently just outside of tower range, and the next wave is crashing, and it's going to put the wave right in front of their tower. Not very good for you, right? Not good at all. But you backed, you made a mistake, whatever. The enemy top laner gets there, and he's like, yes, I have a freeze. But he's wrong. He doesn't have a freeze. You need 4 caster minions to have like an actual freeze. So what's going to happen is this is going to still push back to you, right? But as it does, and since the enemy top laner thinks he has a freeze, he's going to last hit all of the minions. And so what's going to happen is this is going to slow push back towards you. But you're going to be zoned out from XP if he's good. He's going to sit in front of the wave, and you're going to be zoned out of range of the minions. But all you have to do is wait, right? Because even if he does nothing, even if he last hits, or doesn't hit it at all, it's going to eventually start pushing towards you because it's not enough for Eternal Freeze. If you want to know more about wave management, what I'm talking about, go ahead and watch, wave management videos on the internet. I think SRO has a few of those and explains what like internal freezes and stuff mean. Okay, so this is the usual scenario when you're getting zoned out of your own creep wave. It's going to push back towards you anyway. Caps got zoned out in the absolute worst case scenario, and I'm going to show you. Caps got zoned out as his wave was shoving towards Rookie. And this is even worse for mid lane, because mid lane is under the most pressure of getting ganked in higher levels of play. And obviously this is the highest level of play, so mid lane has the most pressure. Now, why is that? Okay. Now, obviously, I understand that this would be easier with graphical. Actually, it's probably so much easier with graphical that I'm just going to come back to this point. It's 139.48. Let's see if I can find a point where they display the mid lane. Yada, 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 yada. Right here. Okay, 138. Okay, I remember it. So, in a moment here, the picture of mid lane is going to pop up. All right, take a look at mid lane. Right. So, in lower elos, top and bot are usually the biggest targets for ganks. Why is that? Well, first of all, they're really long, right? So it's easier to gank. And generally people don't ward, so you can just stroll in and kill the guy. It's not too hard. And even if they do ward, they don't see you coming. So top and bot are just prime places for the jungle to gank. Really unlikely you're going to get counter ganked because the jungler could be anywhere else, and it's, a big gap between mid and top, or mid and bot if you're ganking top. But in high levels of play, look at the lanes. Top and bot have one place to ward, right? And now there are exceptions to this, but they have like one direction to ward in. Top wards to the bot side, and bot wards to the top side. And then, boom, you're basically safe from ganks. If you're watching and you're coordinating, you're communicating, which obviously is professional competitive level, they're going to do that just fine, right? So mid lane becomes the biggest priority for the vast majority of the time. And when I say priority, I don't mean that the jungler's actually going to gank mid the most. I say that the mid laners have the most pressure on them. And why is that? There are actually 4 spots that the jungler can come from. Top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. It's not possible, well it is, but it's hard to do, to ward all of them. And if you don't track their jungler through their jungle with deep wards, it's actually just super hard to know where they're coming from. And that's why Cap struggled here, is because Ning really switched it up a lot. He came from all sorts of different directions. If you guys remember correctly, he was hiding here at one point, and there's no vision there. How the heck are you going to get a ward there? Like, why would you ever ward there? You have so many other places to ward that you could get ganked from, and the more obvious ones are obviously the ones behind you and to the sides of you, so it's really hard to get a ward on that place, and that's why mid lane has a lot of pressure. So Caps picks Irelia, or he doesn't pick it, or his coach there or whatever, and the moment that IG locked in Lissandra, Caps is going to have a rough time. This is one of the only mid lane matchups that Irelia doesn't completely smash because of the existence of Aftershock. And since Irelia doesn't completely smash, and add in the fact that Lissandra has the most single target lockdown in the game, the only way ostensibly that Irelia could survive a gank by the Lissandra and the Camille is if she W's the Lissandra CC. Now here's the problem with that. If Irelia W's before the CC happens, and IG see that the CC or the W happens, right? They're just not going to use their CC. They're going to wait. Then you'd be like, okay, hold your W for as long as you want. We're going to sit right next to you and wait. Now that damage reduction is gone, we're going to one-tap you, right? Irelia is not a tanky champion without that W. She's only tanky with that damage mitigation. So, with that being said, she can't press W before the CC happens. And she can't press W after the CC happens because she's stunned. So you kind of see how this is a lose-lose situation for the Irelia. The one scenario in which she lives a gank is not available to her because she has to predict exactly when Rookie is going to press R and then W right then and hope that Rookie doesn't R. Hope that Rookie does R her in her W. And that's just a bad spot to be in. So it's very hard for Caps to survive a gank. And as I'll eventually show you, is in fact so hard that many times he had to completely concede lane pressure, and as an Aurelia, that's just feels bad. Yeah, caused a lot of problems, and this just this is what snowballed the game in the first place. Of course, like Jackie Love and Bolan through the lane level 1, so they didn't really have to worry too much about bot lane snowballing out of control. Although that did eventually change later, but for the early game they were doing just fine. All right, so that's top jungle mid. I'm gonna put timestamps for this. I wonder if I'm gonna add it as an annotation or something. Probably just put it in like the description or something like that. It's probably easier for me. But yeah, make it easier to organize. Let's talk about the bot lane now. It's the last one, then we'll actually get into the game. So we're going to be doing this for each of the games, but I won't have to talk as much because, like I said, I defined a lot of different terminology and things like that I'm going to use for the other games. So, Jhin, Braum, Kai'Sa, and Alistar. So this is actually a pick that a lot of people were really pissed off at. They were like, how can you pick Jhin into, like, Sion and, like, tanks and shit? You're full AD. What are you doing? Like, when you pick a full AD composition, like, you should know to draft an AD carry that can at least deal with full armor tanks, right? This actually wasn't this was not nearly the biggest deal in these compositions. Jhin was picked, I'm fairly sure, as a counter to Jackie Love's Kai'Sa. Let me go ahead and check the pick order here, but I'm fairly certain that's what happened. Because, yeah, Kai'Sa was first picked, and then Jhin was countered. Jhin does really well into Kai'Sa. Now, it is true that later in the game, Kai'Sa does outscale in the 1v1, not really in a team fight. But she does outscale in the 1v1. But in laning phase, what does Kai'Sa actually struggle with? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about the answer. Do I have a... No, I should be okay. What does she actually struggle with? Now, the vast majority of people will be like burst, like aggressive laning. And that's kind of true. The problem is Kai'Sa being an S tier champion, strong at all points. Maybe less so after the nerf, but they weren't playing with that nerf, I don't think. Were they? I have no idea. Well, it doesn't matter. She's still really strong, even after the nerf. So what's the idea? So Lucian is often brought up as one of the best counters to Kai'Sa. But what Kai'Sa does have is the counterplay available to short-range, high-damage AD carries. So like to Ezreal, to Lucian, to like general lane bullies, she does have a decent way to deal with them because she has her Q. What does her Q do? Well, when a champion goes into really short range with her, and if she just moves away from the minions a little bit, if she presses Q, every single shot will hit that champion. So one of her biggest counterplays is to reposition herself into a place where her Q will hit every single hit onto the enemy champion, and now she suddenly has counterplay against those short range champions. What she doesn't have counterplay to is long range. So Caitlyn comes to mind, Jhin comes to mind, Varus comes to mind. These champions generally do really well into Kai'Sa in the early laning phase because they just outrange her. And she can't do any. She's not going to be Eing in. That's her only escape. And her Q's not going to hit them at all. Her W might hit, but it's not going to do that much damage early game. So you kind of get the idea. She does less well into longer range. Jhin has that in spades, as well as a very specific trading pattern. It makes it very hard for Kai'Sa to respond. We'll go ahead and watch that in the early levels of Jhin utilizing exactly that. So that's why this pick was made. If the top lane... Okay, obviously with the Irelia into Lissandra matchup, this was bound to kind of go wrong unless they outplayed IG severely. But say top lane went fine, this Jhin pick is okay. Like, even with the Sion, even with the Lissandra, even with the Alistar, it's fine. Because you're going to win lane, you're going to come out with some advantages, you can do things with that in the mid game. You're not really going to concern yourself about the late game because you should never get to late game in the first place when you have that kind of lead in the early mid game with the matchup like this. So that was kind of the reasoning. The Braum pick, though, is kind of tragic. Jhin Braum is probably one of the most anti-synergistic of all of the combos in bot lane. There are some bad combos, but this one's not very good. It's obvious, right? Braum has a passive that takes 4 hits. Jhin just doesn't auto that much. So it makes it hard to proc the passive very quickly. Obviously, the other champions are going to make that easier in the late game, but in terms of laning phase, it's just going to be slow going to proc this passive. They do it a couple times. When they do, it goes great because, Jhin's a good champion. But when they don't, it's just like, if only we had another champion that procs that passive faster. So that one's a little strange. But I understand the Braum pick because if you look at the enemy composition, Braum does really well into it. He's going to have shield for long range attacks from Rookie and from Jackie. He's going to have his disengage with the Winter's Bite into the engage of Ning. Ning will never be able to go in if it's not a good situation because Braum will just hit her and everyone will stun her and she'll just die. You know, he's going to block off the enemy team when the Shy goes in. He's going to ult and leave this big crater in the ground. So you kind of get this idea, right? Like, this is not a bad pick. For laning phase, though, I feel like they picked the Jhin for laning phase and then was like, let's pick Braum for the rest of the game. That doesn't make a ton of sense. If you want to go laning phase, you might as well go all in on laning phase and, like, you know, get something off of it. But they kind of split half and half, and that was kind of strange. Jackie Love, Kai'Sa, Alistar. Fantastic combo, right? Alistar procs her passive several times, I'm pretty sure. And just does well in general. Alistar being a very strong pick nowadays. So, remember I said +1 for the top lane. Let's go ahead and go through again. So, Lee Sin and Camille is 0-0. It's even. Like I said, they're about the same tier. Obviously, it's a +1 for Camille if she gets something early, and a +1 for Lee Sin if she doesn't. So that's the idea. And keep in mind that 1-0 Camille and 1-0 Lee Sin, Camille benefits more from kills than Lee Sin does. So, you know, something to think about. Lissandra versus Aurelia, obviously it's a +1 for IG. And then for the bot lane, in terms of laning phase, it's a +1 for FNC. Okay, and that's what archetypal analysis is mostly laning phase. Because as the game goes on, now you're talking about synergistic analysis, and that's a different concept entirely. We talked a little bit about that. We're not going to go too in-depth into it because the games won't last enough. Synergistic analysis is usually like mid-late game team fights, and that's how you kind of analyze it. But, so +1 for FNC, 0-0, +1 for Rookie. So FNC technically wins the early game draft. And that's a really important point. They win the early game draft. If they do not win early game because of synergistic analysis, which I'm just going to tell you the results of, IG comes away in fucking spades, right? FNC needs to win the early game to win the game. Pretty simple, right? They have the early game, they lose the late game and mid game. They have... Compositions will almost never lose in all stages of the game. Unless you're picking really troll champions, you're never going to lose in all stages. You're going to have some stage of the game where you're better. Because think about it, right? If you're picking an early game champion, you're lacking in late game. You pick a late game champion, you're lacking in early game. So you give and take something. Pick and ban phase, champions in general, is always a give and take. Power budget, even of the compositions. So power budget also applies here. So the idea is you're going to have somewhere. So FNC is their early game. They don't win the early game, they lose the game. And that's what happens. All right, it's been, I think, 30 minutes, but that is what a pick and ban analysis looks like. Hope that was enlightening, but let's actually get into the game here, shall we? I'm pretty excited to do this. It would be kind of ironic if the VOD review takes less time than the pick and ban analysis, but I feel like, especially with Clash coming out and competitive coming into the eyes of more than mainstream, I'm just going to give a shout out to all of the competitive organizations that exist for like Bronze, Silver, Gold, Plat, Diamond. There's like Upsurge and Duo and DSG and you know, ABL. These leagues run leagues like this in competitive gameplay. Competitive League is a completely different game. All of that pick ban stuff, I think about in solo queue just to give myself more information to work with to play, and you know, good players generally do, but they more really apply to competitive, right? Because in solo queue, anything goes, right? Anything can happen, but in competitive, generally these kinds of analyses are really important because composition matters way more. With communication, with things like that, games are generally more organized, structured, they stall out longer, yada yada, so you get the idea. Although, stall out longer, IG shows a master class on how to finish games in these 3 finals matches, so that's also another thing. Okay, so let's turn on the volume a little bit because it feels strange to be completely in silence. Maybe I'll turn it up a little bit longer and I'll like comment and I'll just pause on what the casters are saying if I hear something interesting. This is really troll. They let the Braum hit the Winter's Bite onto Jackie instead of Balon. I have no idea why this happens. If you're a support player, especially a tank support player, just tank that shit. If it's not possible for your AD carry to dodge, just take it for him. Take one for the team. You know, take the bullet. So this loses lane instantly for IG. It's very strange. And this is actually another strange thing is FNC. This is a gift from God for them, right? Like even though their matchup is fine and they win naturally, they could take this and just win the game off of it. Because look what happens. This is huge. What happens here is huge. Half HP, right? And heal burned. Okay? So Reckless has D-Blade and Jackie has D-Ring. So D-Ring is built for mana sustain purposes. It does not have lifesteal or any kind of life gain built into it. Doran's Blade is built for trading, right? He has AD, but it also has some lifesteal. So the idea is if you hit minions long enough with a D Blade, you'll regen way faster than anyone else that doesn't have that kind of lifesteal, or any lifesteal at all. So in this trade, Jackie is not hurting for mana, she's hurting for HP. So this is like a huge, huge benefit for FNC, but they just failed to translate this into anything. I didn't actually watch the casters were more focused on top and mid, rightfully so, because that's what all the action was. But if I were to look at the VODs of this and like a replay file, I would watch to see exactly why FNC couldn't push this for a win. In chess, there's like losses, draws, and wins, right? Those are the three outcomes, right? And there are certain games where it's just drawn. And that reminds me a lot of like Lee Sin Camille. It's just like 0-0. It's just kind of drawn at certain points. But in this lane, like this is also kind of drawn. Like neither lane has enough of an advantage to really push for a huge advantage. But with this, now they can push for a win, which is the chess terminology. But at this point, IG, no heal. Hylissang has Ignite. This is just a really bad spot for IG to be in. So this was interesting to me. They decided no heal. Okay, this is really important, by the way. No heal on the side of Jackie. I want you guys to think. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. What should FNC have done? I mean, you can pause the video and give you some more time, obviously. But what should FNC have done right here? What was just super obvious? That was really strange they didn't go for it. So Baolan currently, right, is at 30% HP because he stepped up really greedily for zero reason on Alistar and got completely chunked out for it. All they have to do is hit that last tick of the passive. Even if he flashes the exact moment, he's going to be stunned for a while. Double flash come out from the FNC bot lane, and that's first blood. I have no idea why they didn't go for this. The only concern for them, right, is a Camille level 2 gank. Only concern. But guess who's coming down right now? Draxyr, right? So even if Camille level 2 ganks with a Braum, which is, I think, the reason why they picked the Braum, she's going to die too. So this was a kill they just missed. And I think it's plays like this. Like, obviously, I didn't watch enough of the bot lane matchup post this point. But this is just a kill. Like, there's no way he survives this, especially with no heal available. And even with heal available, if Hylissang drops the Ignite before the heal, I'm pretty sure he's still dead with the force shot from Reckless. So this was just really strange to me. I was watching this last night, and I was like, am I just really tired, or did they just miss a kill? Very, very, very concerning. And that kind of kill you just can't miss on the world stage. Small advantages like that can mean all the difference. There's something called the butterfly effect in League of Legends. This is something I mention all the time. And this is why I believe early game is the most important phase of the game. And I think that anyone that doesn't think so is, doesn't think about the butterfly effect. If something happens in the early game, right, everything that happens after it changes. So, like, think of time travel, right? The idea of a butterfly, just one flap of a butterfly's wings changes, it can change the course of history based on, the literal infinite variables that change after that. So, same thing happens in League. You change one thing, and it's entirely possible, and even probable, that everything else after that point would have happened differently for a variety of factors and reasons. And so, it's really hard to evaluate games when you have these kinds of mistakes in the early game. Very strange. And that was like a mechanical play. It was also a macro play. It's not just like mechanical execution. Mechanical execution failure at that stage of the game would have been like if Hylissang flashed and like canceled his auto. That would have been a mechanical failure. But I don't think that would have happened. He should have just went for it. Very strange. And now look at the lane. It's equalized. And not equalized in the sense that like they're back into it. They still have no heal. But now Reckless is suddenly the one behind because Jackie has drank both pots and has the Alistar sustain, and it's just like, well, okay, now we took a completely winning situation and just threw it out the window. I had a tornado warning last night, and that was pretty scary. I was like, this is not as scary as watching these two. I'm kidding. One comment I made after this game is not a single player on either team for Game 1 played well. I watched Game 1. I studied it pretty well as I was watching. Game 2, I kind of zoned out a bit. I was tired. And Game 3, I didn't watch it all. So Game 3 is going to be interesting to evaluate because I haven't watched it yet. All right. So this is something I'm going to mention now before I forget, because I probably forget. The Shy completely destroyed Buipo in the top lane. Now, why do I say that? Because if you think about it, they were around even in CS and 0-0 and trading back and forth summoners and things like that. So it seems pretty even, right? But what did I mention? What was the +1 in the archetypal analysis of Champ Select? It was for Weibo, right? So when you equalize a +1 matchup, when I say +1 is not a small thing. It is a big thing. It means like this is your time to shine. When you equalize a +1 matchup, when you win like Riven into Jace or like Vayne into Caitlyn or something like that, it is a big deal. And why is that a big deal? When you beat an early game champion, which is generally what counters you, right? Or like someone that's really good early game, you shut down their early game. And generally, if you're losing to an early game champion, you're not an early game champion yourself, like the Vayne into Caitlyn. And so that means you're going to go online faster and skip your early game, and suddenly it's just like everything's going well for you. So to do well into a counter matchup, the Shy completely destroyed Weibo game 1. Not enough people thought about it in general, but this happened, and this was a big reason why IG completely rolled the enemy team, because Weibo just did not get a single advantage. In fact, he was down just slightly, and that is incredibly bad for FNC to have happen to their top laner. To have a counter pick matchup like that. And think about it, right? One of the reasons why Caps picked Aurelia and Lissandra, which I think Lissandra came 1, 2, 2. Yeah, no, wait, they picked Aurelia into Lissandra? No, Aurelia was first pick. The reason why they picked Lissandra to Aurelia is because the enemy team got the Urgot into Sion. You see this give and take, right? One team counters the other, and the other team counters the back, and they get a give and take. So if they didn't have to pick the Urgot into the Sion, well, I might be wrong here. Maybe Urgot was picked before Sion, but regardless, that's how pick ban works. Then, you know, things change in terms of champ select. So it's an interesting play that the casters do mention. Hylissang brings up his shield to block Jackie from getting the cannon. I was just like, that's cute, but they could have killed Baolong. You know what I mean? Like, they probably could have killed Jackie by this point too. It's just, I was like, you got a cannon, 40 gold advantage rather than like 600. Seems good. Yeah, it was just disappointing to watch. At that point, like, there's nothing to even analyze in bot lane because everything should have been different. Everything should have been like, Baolong should be 0-1. And like Jackie, like 30 CS down. It's like, come on. Super simple. So this is a great example. You see Aurelia. What does Aurelia love to do? She loves to go Q, 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 and then Q on top of you with her E stack and just go for it, right? Like, she loves to just beat you into the ground. And that's why Aurelia mid was picked and did so well for so long. And now you have this pick Lissandra that comes out in Worlds, and it's just like, my champion sucks. I can't do anything. And there's one thing I have to mention. Do you remember, what are we going to call it? We're going to call it activation time. This is not, activation time is usually used in the sense of like how long your champion comes online. We're going to use a little bit of a different definition for now because I can't think of a better name for it right now. But activation time in the sense that if a skirmish happens, remember that Camille versus Yasuo example I gave? If a skirmish happens, Lissandra's going to be able to get into that engagement way faster than Aurelia. Why? Because she can go over walls and travel this much distance with her E. Aurelia can't do that. She has to like flash and things like that, and get into range of her ultimate, her Q, or her E, and those are pretty short range. So Lissandra has a huge advantage in that regard. So this matchup is just all bad for Caps. Like, there's nothing good about this. The only thing like actually good about this is in a skirmish, if Caps is in a good spot and does get off his combo, his ultimate, and gets off the stacks and starts shitting on people, then obviously Aurelia is better, because no one is better than Aurelia in that specific type of skirmish. That's very, very specific. That's just one example of many. Okay, so we've talked about top lane, we talked about bot lane. What's left? We talked about mid lane, there's only jungle. So at this stage in the game, what's happened? So here's the idea. Okay, the Lee Sin went from red to bot scuttle, which is pretty standard, nothing really strange there. Prevents, allows the bot lane to get ahead, which they didn't because they messed up the kill. But regardless, he went there, he did it. Now, at this point, keep in mind, he cannot run to his top side. It cannot happen. Some people are mentioning on Reddit that this vertical jungle was wrong. I'm not entirely sure why that is, because this was entirely correct. Once he committed to the bot side scuttle, he was forced into vertical jungling. And here's the reason why. And he really should have vertical jungled anyway. Camille beats Lee Sin in the early game. That's it. You have Lissandra in the enemy team. You have Sion on the enemy team. These are not matchups that generally go super well for your team, and you have insane prio to come collapse on the Camille. And collapsing on a Camille is pretty laughable in the first place. You're just going to get camps and things like that, which is fine. And against Camille is pretty devastating, but generally not the topic of contention. Generally, what do you want to do? Against a Camille, you do want to stall out the game. You do want to get to the mid game where she's completely useless and you're still a champion. And even though the enemy team's synergistic analysis was way better, if in the mid game, if they're just 4v5, you know, what's the answer going to be? Camille, not a great champion if she doesn't get anything. So FNC had a right idea here. Stall out the game, vertical a little bit, stay away from the Camille. Now, look at top lane, though. That should not be happening. Bwipo should not have, you know, be pushing the tower. Now, highly likely is he allowed himself to be pushing the tower because Draxyr is playing bot side. This is really high-level top gameplay, and it's really good for him to do this. And it's going to bite him in the butt later as he misplays the lane later and falls behind the Scion, which is ridiculous. But this is correct for the time being. Here's the reason why. Imagine if Bwipo shoved up into tower and got pressure on the Shy, got CS advantage, whatever, and Camille's playing topside and Lee Sin is verticaling bot. It's not going to go super well for Bwipo. Here are the two occurrences that can happen, okay? One, he fucking dies, right? He just gets ganked and just dies. It's like, okay. Two, he has to concede the wave, right? And the wave is shoving towards the enemy, which is what I mentioned, Caps versus Rookie, is the worst case scenario. That you cannot let that happen because you're going to lose so much. He's just going to freeze it, and you're going to be donezo because Camille's verticaling top, and you have no idea where the hell she is. You're just screwed. A ward doesn't save you if you're getting verticaled. That's a really important thing. Don't just think, just ward. Wards themselves aren't like static fields that stop the jungler from entering. They just let you know. But if you're so far up on the lane, it doesn't matter if you know they're coming because you're just too far down. You're going to die anyway. That's the idea. Or even if Bwipo survives to have to burn flash and the wave's still pushing, that's the equivalent of a death, right? Because now you have no flash and you can't push up. You're just donezo. Your Lee Sin can't help you because he's bot side. Everything just goes badly. So Bwipo does this part correctly with the Draxyr vertically, which is fine. Is it possible for Draxyr to do a more standard path and go red into top scuttle and contest it with Bwipo shoving, with Caps looking for all-ins? Yes, it's possible. Why did they go for this instead of that scenario I just played? I don't know. Because the scenario I just played is the more traditional standard route. That's what I would expect out of a composition like this. Is it bad that they didn't go for it? No. Is it suboptimal? Maybe. It could have made the difference between a win and a loss in this game. But, you know, it's neither here nor there. They didn't do it, so nothing to talk about. All right, let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit because I think nothing's going to happen. The archetype analysis stays the same. Mid lane, like I said, this is one of the points I was talking about. Take a look at this. This wave is shoving towards Rookie. Rookie is having the time of his life because Caps, Caps would love nothing more right now to press W on that wave, Q, 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 and back. He would love it. It would be just Christmas for him because he could back, get his, you know, get some items and reset the wave and crash it and get out of this horrible lane. He has 2 corrupting pot stacks, but the enemy has 3, so he's losing regardless. So this is not a good spot for Caps to be in. He wants the wave to be shoving towards him, so he has a highway to get on Rookie if he wants to. This is just not good for him at all. He's vulnerable to ganks, so he would love nothing more to shove this in instantly. But he can't. Why not? Look at how much vision he has right now. It's one spot. It's that ward right here. So that means there are currently, remember I said 4 spots, so bottom left, top right is that way. It's hard. Directions are hard. Top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. That ward right there, we're going to call them auxiliary gank locations. The reason why we're going to call them auxiliary gank locations is because they are the ones that happen the least often in competitive, which is straight from the bush. They happen quite often, but generally that's not where, because usually they're warded, right? So generally that doesn't happen. So usually people are hiding along the sides. So these are auxiliary. This technically you can just call it 6 gank locations, which is top left, bottom left, top right, middle right, bottom right. You kind of get the idea. So he has one of those 6 locations warded. 5 locations he could get ganked from. Not good for Caps. He has no idea where Camille is. They have 0 way to track the Camille and her path through the jungle, through the enemy, through Lee Sin's jungle. It's just impossible for them to track. So not doing super great on that front. So taking a look at the pathing. Lee Sin, Draxyr is currently pathing better than the Camille. Ning should have gotten the wolves to equalize the jungle camp count, but decided she wanted to do something else instead, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Falling behind like this and say this right now, take a picture of this, not literally, but a mental picture of this. If it stays this way for the next 10 minutes, guess who's going to win the mid game? FNC. Why? Camille's not a champion. That's the whole thing. But if Camille gets something right now, then it's bad. But having a camp up, it's pretty good to be against Camille. This is not a failed gank. Brox is just helping Caps push the wave. This deters the Camille from ganking at that specific point, and they have no idea where Camille is, so... Anyway, this is really lucky for Draxyr, right? Because look at his camps. None of them are up. He went red to bot side scuttle, which means that his initial camp clear was the bot side scuttle, which is not guaranteed to come up. Look at top side scuttle, that is. But now Camille, because she went red Krugs instead of red scuttle, Krugs is going to come up the moment she's finished her clear, and it's just suddenly really good for her. I need tissue or something. Jesus. This is clogged up. There's some kind of phenomenon where if I talk a lot, my nose clog up. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why that is. Probably a really simple answer to it, but I don't really care. Okay. Should be okay now. Okay. So Camille comes out ahead, but she left the wolf camp up, so Brox is like, okay, I'm okay. So she could have been ahead with that Krugs, with her clear path, which is really good, but didn't happen. Okay, this was kind of tragic. Let's go ahead and take a look to see where she smites something. I think she smites the Krugs, which is a huge... Okay, this was actually a large mistake for Ning to make, because this smite on the Scuttle Crab is what gave Draxyr a lead. Before, he was even and starting to gain a lead, but then suddenly now he just objectively has the lead. Okay? That Scuttle Crab, at this point, is like the turning point between the jungle matchup. It's like whoever gets this is in good shape, so Lee Sin gets it. The reason why is she smited the Krugs, which did make sense generally when junglers at this level, they want to smite it for timing or for health or for charges. So for timing, that very well might be why she did this. But Krug camp, if I recall correctly, to smite the big Krug probably takes away maybe 3 seconds of clear time, and they would still have been here in time. Maybe Lee Sin would have been here already, but there's no way he's getting it past Lysandra and the Camille. Not entirely sure why she smited the Krugs there. Because the second is for health. She's obviously doing fine. She just backed. And 3 is for charges, which is if you have 2 charges, you want to use a smite so that it starts to recharge. You're not wasting smite charges and saving yourself a little bit of time. So yeah, this was just really strange. This is where now Brox is level 5, leeching off a little bit of mid lane XP. But this is where Ning could have caught up. And as you notice, Lee Sin is level 5 with the Scuttle Crab against a level 4 Ning. This is just a jungle travesty. All from one thing. She smited Krugs. So, not entirely sure why she did that. You know, if you notice that she had 1 pot available, I would have much rather had her drink the pot and then instead of using her smite if health was a concern. But I don't think it was. She had Skirmisher Saber. Alright, yeah. Note the top lane. Shy is playing this masterfully. Okay, so this was where Ning actually trolls. So the Krug thing was pretty troll, but this is where mechanically she griefs really hard. I want to point this out because it's really indicative and representative of the mechanical misplays happening throughout worlds. But take a look at this. Let's go ahead and change the speed back to 1. So at this point in the game, this is a great play macro-wise from IG, right? This is a really big thing. Look at Aurelia's items, okay? She has Merc Treads. That's it. She put 1,100 gold into Merc Treads, which gives her 2 things at this stage in the game and this specific scenario. Movement speed doesn't matter. So what is it? Tenacity and Magic Resist. Against the Alistar and Lysandra, Magic Resist does pretty good. Magic Resist against Camille, on the other hand, does jack all for you. It's actually a waste of money if you're trying to take into account the Camille. So, all you have to do is have Camille land her damage, and the Alistar's knockup is not canceled by Tenacity. Knockups are not affected by Tenacity. So this is a pretty much, like, if they play this correctly, this is a guaranteed kill. So let's watch. Okay. So, why was Caps able to get out of the Lysandra CC chain so fast? Like, why? How did they miss that kill essentially? Because it was free. I tell you, this is free. Right here, she gets rooted instantly, which it's fine because the Lissandra saw the stun come out. She wants to be able to keep the Relia in place for the ult combo chain CC, which is fine. But at this point, boom, she gets ulted, right? And Ning should immediately E the wall, E forward, and then flash behind Caps, pushing Caps towards the Alistar. Then Alistar flash knockups with the Ignite, and Caps is fucking dead. See? That's the events that should have played out, and let me tell you, that is not mechanically hard to pull off. At all. None of that required any kind of outplay. Very standard League of Legends mechanical play. Didn't happen. Probably stage nerves, like I mentioned, and probably just a lack of communication on what was going on. But, you know, there's that. This guy should have been dead too. Considering the amount of people that should have died so far, that's 1 on Baolon, right, and 1 on Caps. So that's probably 1-1. However, like I said, if Baolon died, that changes the whole game. So this play right here might never have happened. That's the butterfly effect in question. So, yeah, missed a kill. Kind of tragic. But luckily for IG, they're world champions now. So they don't just leave that and be like, oh, we failed. They gank her again when there's no flash. And since Caps is Caps this game, he falls for it. So at this point, what should Caps do? A lot of you might be asking that because as we all know, he dies a lot after this. So what should he have done? So he has no flash up against Camille Lissandra. This feels bad. Just let me put this out there. It is not almost at all Caps' fault that he performed badly in this game specifically, because this just any player in the world would have struggled with this position. You feel locked in. You're playing a champion that wants to get ahead early and has a specific pattern to do so. You cannot use that pattern whatsoever. You don't do damage to your lane opponent. You don't do damage to their jungler. You had to build Merc Tread's first item, and it's just you're not feeling too good. You have no flash. You have no teleport, which can alleviate situations like this. For your mental to stay strong at this point requires a lot. This was Weepo getting smacked by the top laner. The Shy, forces out the flash. This is all really good. Now, this was actually a huge topic to consider. Gonna go over it. Now, we spent a lot of time, but, I don't think there's a problem with this kind of fodder view being a long time. Okay, listen to this. There are 2 different types of ganks. Okay, now I think LS has talked. I think everyone's talked about this. That's anyone important. There are 2 different types of ganks. Okay, the first type is to burn summoners. Okay, that's it. So if you know they have summoners, you're ganking them. You hope you can kill them, but most likely they're just gonna flash away. You're gonna just burn their summoners. That's the first kind. That gank has the least amount of reward, the greatest amount of risk. Because if they have a summoner, you get counter ganked, and you're essentially usually forcing a situation to burn their summoners and equalize a lane that was probably already losing. Because if it was winning, you wouldn't need to gank them to burn their summoners. Then it's risky because I think a lot of things could go wrong, and even if the gank fails, something already went wrong. A gank that gets a summoner is essentially still a failed gank because not only did you waste time, you showed yourself on the map, and that's just invaluable information to the enemy team. So, not a great situation to be in when you're ganking to burn summoners. The second kind of gank is when they don't have summoners and where the kill is much more likely. This one has the greatest amount of reward, the least amount of risk, right? Generally not as forced because they don't have flash. Everything is pretty much natural, and it goes well. When a solo laner doesn't even have to solo kill the enemy opponent, but when they burn a summoner, especially flash, on their own, like Shy did here, you're about to see what happens when your jungler sees that happen and is like, it's go time, boys. They're gonna do it. Holy crap, my nose is filling up. God knows what. I don't understand. It's funny, I'm not even sick. It's just completely tragic. I remember last time I was sick and I did a video like this, there was some complaining, so I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic while I do this. Okay, wonderful. So, when you burn a summoner on a champion that's usually early game, as a late game champion, you're winning lane so hard, and it enables what's about to happen. So now look at this. This is where the game actually shifts in IG's favor, even though it's 0-0. Really important events had to happen here. Well, Cap should have died, but he didn't, so we'll just take it that he didn't, and shouldn't have died, otherwise it's too complicated. So he burned his flash. Top has no flash. IG has their top side, which should be losing, by the way, because it's Lee Sin, Aurelia, Urgot into Cyan, Camille, and Lissandra. It's pretty even, but they have a slight edge for FNC because they have more early game, mostly in that Urgot versus Cyan matchup. Now that this is equalized, IG is gonna be like top lane, by the way. This is Hinshin's worst nightmare. And not just Hinshin's worst nightmare, but also like Dyrus as a mid laner's worst nightmare. Because top mid is just completely locked off now for FNC. Look at the vision available. Just one pink ward in the pixel brush. It is rough. Now bot lane, obviously Reckless is winning from that level 1. Should be a death on Balon, doesn't matter. But bot lane is now going to become an island. Now, you could ask, okay, you know that IG is going to play really hard to the top side. Broxah has two options. As a jungler, you always have two options, especially when you know what the enemy jungler is going to do. And I think it's going to be pretty obvious what IG was going to do here. They're going to play top side because, you know, no flashes. And you also have high CC laners. That's a whole other topic when you're considering jungle pressure, is what kind of damage or what tools do your laners offer you when you're coming in. For example, if you have a Soraka top, ganking her is probably going to be pretty difficult to do unless you can 1v1 the top laner yourself, right? Because the Soraka is not going to give you that much. So the idea is, okay, so Broxah, what's he going to do? So there are two options. He can continue verticaling the game. He can go bot side and pressure out the Alistar and Kai'Sa, or he can try and counter gank the Camille. Camille hasn't gotten a lead yet, but early game is not over. So her realm of strength is still in effect. Early game generally ends around like the 12-minute mark, generally when the first tower falls, something like that, and people are starting to hit like 1.5 items. So she is not out of the running yet in terms of hitting her early game power spike, and as you're about to see, she's about to cash in on that early game strength and keep herself in the game. Remember, it's a ticking time bomb when you pick Camille jungle. If you do not get a lead in a certain amount of time before the early game ends, well, you're gonna have a rough time as that Camille jungle player. So here's the problem. Broxah is still outclassed by this Camille, sort of. He has his kick. Camille does not have a combat ultimate. However, Camille's kit, without the ultimate, is way stronger than Lee's. So if Lee Sin can utilize his ultimate better than Camille can utilize her kit advantage, then they're still okay. And that actually is about to happen. I'll show you where Broxah doesn't utilize his kick well enough, and they're going to lose because Camille is a better champion without the kick. Let's go ahead and keep watching. So what Caps is doing here is what Caps has wanted to do for a long time, which is actually shove the wave in, because Rookie has been preventing him from doing that for so long, and Caps is just feeling it. And keep in mind that like even though the CS advantage is what, like 7, just imagine how bad this feels for Caps to play. That has a mental toll, big mental toll, to be in this kind of position for this long too. It feels like you're being choked out completely. Not a good position to have. Now this is actually a macro misplay from Caps. It's really hard to kind of make this play. As an observer where we have complete vision on the map, we know it's the correct play. If he shoved in the wave into tower right here by holding W, Eing the whole wave, and Q, he recovers his advantage. Rookie trades blue buff for lane prio, and Caps gets an insane back. This could have pulled back mid lane, but, you know. How risky is it to actually go for a play like that, right? When you know Camille and Lissandra are on the map. What if they're just waiting for you to do something like that? But, you know, it's a risk and reward kind of thing. If Aurelia does make that play and succeeds, she just fixed a lot of the problems she's been having for a while. She's back in it. So, you know, it's something to consider. So Broxah, like I mentioned, he decides to go for option A and plays towards the top side. You know, I probably would agree. It's probably the safer of the two. If you go for a play on the bot side and it doesn't work out and Camille rules the top side, you just lost instantly. But as we're about to watch, it doesn't matter that he chooses this option.
All right. Let's go ahead and speed this up again. I don't think anything happens for a while. Oh, yeah, this is where they do the little dance. Now, remember what I mentioned. Lee Sin is stronger than Camille. If Camille doesn't use... If he uses his kick properly, against champions like Camille and Sion, all you have to do is kick flash the Sion into the Camille, and you win the fight. So, and especially with the Urgot, who excels in skirmishes like this, where you have 2v2s and things like that, Ning is like, I'm going to get the hell out of here. And I agree. There's no reason whatsoever for Ning to go for something there. It's just super risky. Can they win it? Sure. Do they win it? Most of the time? Probably not. So, I like the restraint. So many junglers are like, I'm here. Let's try it. And not a good outlook on the game to have. Alright, take a look. This is where Broxa... So Broxa anticipates this gank, which is... I agree that it's not too hard to anticipate. He's sitting right at Raptor Camp, ready for something like this to happen. So take a look at this fight. First of all, it's botched. Caps goes in way too early. They should have gone in together. But Caps goes in when Lee Sin is still all the way back here. Now, how could Lee Sin have played this differently? Maybe thrown out his Q blind and try and hit one of the two champions and get in at the same time as Caps. So that IG have to decide whether to hit the Lee Sin currently pounding on them or to finish off the Aurelia. Hard decision to make in the spur of the moment, and usually moments of indecision like that can turn a fight. However, Broxa doesn't throw out because he wants to guarantee the hit on his Q, which is understandable, but if he's going to do that, then Cap should never have gone in this early thinking that they're going to win it that guaranteed. All right? So he lands the Q. So at this point, this was actually really important. That Hextech ultimatum knocked Lee Sin out of the fight. So I want to show you a little replay. Oh shit, I went back too far. It's really hard to manage when the timestamp is this large. Alright, so we're going to slow this down here. Probably turn off the audio because it's going to sound strange. Okay, take a look at this. So what needs to happen in this fight? Remember, because Ning has a better kit without, Lee Sin's ultimate included. In fights like this, Lee Sin needs to land some kind of kick. Now, Camille is a much weaker champion, not weaker, but squishier champion than Rookie. And in a team fight, or in a skirmish like this, you generally want to prioritize Squishy over Tank, because you can kill the Squishy and faster and then take them out of the fight, usually do more damage, which is also true in this case. There are no ramp champions in this situation. Ramp champions means like Darius, or Ginsu's Rageblade champion, or like a Kaisa with a stacking passive, something like that, where the longer the fight goes, the more damage they do. I remember where I thought Squishy took priority over ramp, and I lost a game because of it. Not true. Darius was more important than the Ahri in that situation, even though Ahri is squishier. So, no ramp, so by default, Camille is the target to go for. Okay? Caps didn't do enough. Oh, he does focus the Camille, but the problem here is the only way to really bring this back into a winnable fight is not just the kick onto the Camille, because it doesn't do enough damage. Especially you don't have Warrior completed, you have a Tiamat, things like that. You would have to kick the Lissandra into the Camille. And how to do that? Well, that's kick flash, right? You are the Rookie, the Lissandra, and then you flash in the opposite direction and bring the Lissandra into the Camille. Pretty standard stuff, right? Pretty hard to dodge. But that right there, where he gets knocked away from the fight, prevents him from making that play. And honestly, now that I watched this again, I thought that was the only reason they lost. The biggest reason why they lost is because Caps just went in by himself and is 1v2 for a good 3 seconds, which is way too long. He's not that tanky of a champion. The biggest thing to note here is that he has Merc Treads. Merc Treads only mitigate one type of damage from this fight, and that's the Lissandra. Merc Treads does jack all to the Camille. Actually jack all. So he's taking full damage from the Camille. Super important note, because when I play top lane, right, and I'm against, say, I'll just put like a Yasuo, and the jungler is a Kha'Zix, I'm going to build Ninja Tabi's so fast, because Ninja Tabi mitigates both kinds of damage. So if I get into a fight, whether with my jungler or without them, I'm going to do way better. But the moment I have an Elise jungle or a Nidalee jungle enemy team, I'm way more hesitant to build
a Ninja Tab my first item, even though it does well into my laning opponent, because I'm like, if I get ganked, I'm going to fucking die. And that's usually what happens. So that's really important to note, is if you build boots first, you're putting so much gold into this item that does absolutely nothing against a certain type of damage. I think it would have been better here for Aurelia to just go Phage first if she really was concerned about her tankiness, and just play safer in specific scenarios. Because right now, this fight goes really poorly because of that Merc Treads. I understand the CC is an issue. You have to W the CC. It's just a really... Like I said, this is like a no-win situation for the Aurelia. I'm giving different options. All these options suck for a variety of reasons. It's just compositionally, Aurelia's having a bad time. But anyway, Draxyr can't find the kick because... there's no kick to be found, and just a bad situation. The Hextech Ultimatum knocked him away, took him out of the fight. It was just tragic. So at this point, the game goes poorly for FNC. Why is that? 0-1. Isn't it still comebackable? No. Here's the reason why. When you lose an early game composition, and look who got the kill. Your one win condition is the Camille becoming useless. That is your win condition, because that is the only weakness in the enemy team's composition. Every other champion of their composition is so good in like every situation possible in mid and late game. The only one is Camille. That's your win condition. You just gave her a kill, which delays the amount of time that she falls off, and if she gets a couple more kills off of that kill, she doesn't fall off at all, because she catches up to the timeline that top lane Camille has, and it is just a tragedy. So... right here, basically, FNC was just like, well, this is going to be a real big uphill battle. At this point in the game, already, I would give 60-40 to IG. Maybe 70-30. Probably 65-35 is probably more accurate. 65-35 for IG. This is a rough one. Like, obviously, there are certain comebackable, opportunities for the Urgot to snatch someone out, which does happen to Balon eventually. There are certain opportunities for Reckless to carry a fight, but as you guys mentioned... Jhin is not great to that composition, and he did win lane that hard, so it's just like, okay, we have this Jhin. But untouched lanes have the potential to carry, by the way. That's a really big concept not a lot of people think of. When you have a lane that's 0-0, 1-0, 2-0, even in a game that's like 0-10, those champions and those characters and players have the ability to carry because they're not touched by all of the events happening around the map. They still have baseline strength. Baseline strength meaning... at a certain point, you have a certain amount of items, and that means that they have enough damage or enough tankiness to carry a fight. So when you're in your solo queue games, look out for that. Any champions or players on your team that are untouched, even in a game that's going really south, as long as they remain untouched, you guys have a chance to win. If they start going like 0-1, 0-2, now you're in trouble. Holy crap, talking this... Alright, I remember to mute my mic. Yay. So let's continue playing it forward. But anyway, as I was saying, it's just a rough situation for FNC at this point. Alright. So good gank from Ning. Pretty well executed, I'd say. It would have been a bad gank to go for if Caps didn't Q in. So that is something to keep in mind, that IG should have played that out better and should have executed it better, because there was a chance for FNC to win that skirmish if Caps didn't play it like he did. So that is a bad thing. He should have held his ultimate, waited a little longer, baited out more from IG, and then went in really hard with Draxyr and then fuck him up. But if they played it like that, I'm pretty sure IG would have lost that. If FNC won right there, they very well might have just won the game. It would not be as easy as I just mentioned for IG because of the situations I described. They still lose in a synergistic analysis. But let's talk about this in a bit. But it would have been a much better game for them to play, much easier. They wouldn't be in such a bad spot. So here, one thing that I saw multiple times happen for the Shy and Dweepo, if you play Sion, keep this in mind, it's really important. A lot of times the Shy would hold down his Q, right, like this. Dweepo can't get out of that Q, by the way, because if he walks to the sides, he's going to get hit before he walks out of it. If he E's in any direction, what Shy just did is going to happen because he's a good player. He's going to release the knock-up the moment he sees the Dweepo's E animation. What that does, okay... what that does is it allows Bwipo, or allows Shy, to not only do the damage, but cancel Bwipo's dash and take away the E cooldown. So it's a really good way of winning trades. He does that so many times throughout the game. What Bwipo should do in this situation is not E. He should hold his E, just press W, and try and walk out of it. Or try and walk out of it, which increases the amount of time, or decreases the amount of time that Shy has to keep holding it down, which decreases the damage. And then at the very end, when Bwipo thinks that Shy is going to release it, he presses W for the shield. That's probably a decent way to play it as well. But regardless, at this point, he's gotten to Scion. His window for killing the Scion is long gone. Long gone. At this point, the only way he kills the Scion is if a Scion really screws up. Iceborne Gauntlet is a really interesting build, by the way. Against an Execute champion, you generally want to build HP, because HP counters the Execute. It makes it, you give you more self HP, and then your Execute threshold, it goes up, and you have more time before you get executed. But with just armor, obviously the Execute threshold, it's harder for them to make you get there, but it just makes you less tanky. I think the Shy is just good enough, like mechanically, where he's not going to trade poorly, and he's going to beat him up with the 20% CDR and the Iceborne Sheen proc. So I think this is fine for him. Do not recommend doing this by yourself, because it does make you very squishy. However, in this situation, because of the lack of magic damage on the side of FNC, Iceborne Gauntlet's even better. For example, imagine if that Aurelia was like a LeBlanc. She's going to stroll up the top lane, QRW a Scion with Iceborne Gauntlet, and his health bar is going to go like this. Because he has nothing. He has no HP, no MR, so all of that damage is completely unmitigated. So not a great situation for him to be in. So this was a situation where the Shy didn't release fast enough and still gets knocked up, but obviously it's still a great situation for him to be in. So this was a huge mechanical misplay from the side of Shy, forces him to flash. This is uncharacteristic of him, and he makes a couple of misplays like this throughout the game as well. Like I said, this world just was kind of strange. This ultimate you should never miss. All you have to do to hit this ultimate point blank is just put your cursor on the character and press R. It's not possible to dodge if you do that. But, you know, his cursor was somewhere else, so he misses the ult. Now, because the W damage was ticking throughout the entire thing, I'm not entirely sure if Shy could have killed Bwipo. Bwipo has quite a bit of HP left, and Scion is still a tank. It would have been close, but I think he had a chance. But Bwipo definitely would not have burned the Scion's flash, because keep in mind that CC cancels the W tick of Urgot. So Urgot wouldn't be shredding through a good 20% of the HP of Scion while he's busy ulting nothing. Okay? Pretty standard top lane analysis there. Ooh, this is rough. There's a lot of detail. Anyway, Bwipo flashes out, which is wise. Yeah, pretty standard stuff there. Don't think Ning has enough damage to actually kill Bwipo if he is over that wall, so. This was just really strange, by the way. You just saw the Camille top lane, right? The only place that he could go right now that would make you safe from a gank from the Camille is Krugs. And it's highly likely with which direction he came from, the Tribush, that he just came from Krugs. So it's like, there's no Krugs to take. So he's going to be coming bot side towards the bot or mid lane anyway, maybe to do Raptors. Either way, this engage was just, I think this is where Caps was like, all right, guys, I'm tilted. It was a good flash, but he's going to die regardless. I don't know what these two were doing. They had all the time in the world to react to Caps' engage and just didn't. I think the communication here must have been just fucked. Like, Caps must have not said anything when he went in. Because if these two were here, it's possible they could have saved their boy. Because Broxa comes in, kicks away the Camille, and Caps is okay because the Exec ultimatum, you know, dies out. But I don't know. At this point, FNC, like I said, it's not just composition, it's not just theory, it's not just gameplay. When you're a Aurelia player into Camille Lissandra, playing the game as it's played out so far, I guarantee you Caps was tilted at this point. Because not tilted even in the conscious sense, but like feeling pressure more than everyone else is, because it's just like, it's such a crappy game to play. Like, imagine just how bad it feels to get zoned out from a wave at like level 5. Like, come on. There's us playing Aurelia too. You're not even playing a late game champion. You're playing like a lane bully. It's just like, oh, this game. And now they get 2 towers and this game snowballs. All right, I don't even know if it's perfect. They do show a masterclass in closing out the game. I think this is self-explanatory enough of how they do it. You can just And I'm sure there are plenty of people that can explain it just as well as I could on how they close out the game so well from this point on. It was just, there's something called tempo. They never stopped pushing for their next objective. They played as a team, utilizing their strengths. They have a synergistic advantage of like +5 at this point because Camille, remember I said it's +1 if she gets a lead, which she now has. So there's nothing to do here. Let's go ahead and skip to game 2 because if you guys want, and I will do an analysis of how they push their lead so well, but I'm pretty sure a lot of it's intuitive stuff that you guys can already figure out. Like I said, send me a message if you want to see analysis of their masterclass on closing out a game, because it was a masterclass. It was fantastic. It reminds me of how clean the Korean teams were at some point at closing out games when they got a lead. It's very methodical. So this is the second game. Let's go and skip to the end where they have, like I said, I don't know enough about like the dynamics of pick and ban to really do a good analysis on it. So we'll just go skip to the end where it's like, all right, this is the comps. Oh, let's wait for the computer to load. Here we go. Wonderful. Okay. So a little bit similar. We have the same top lane for FNC, but now Aurelia for the top side and Gragas. So this is going to be really fun to analyze because this is stuff I know a lot about. Azir into Syndra, we'll talk about that. And of course the bot lane. So instead of going top to bot, let's go bot to top this time, change it up a little bit. Ezreal Braum, obviously way more synergistic than Jhin Braum. The idea, of course, is... you can proc the passive way easier. Your Q procs the Braum passive. You gain attack speed through your passive. As Ezreal, you're going to proc that passive pretty fast. So good. I like the synergy. On the other side, though, we have Lucian Alistar, which, of course, Alistar's still really strong. And Lucian is like the OG lane bully right now. Does a lot of damage in short combos. It's really hard to deal with him. Now, what's the deal here? Okay, what's the deal? So, first of all, they picked Braum mostly because the enemy team picked Lucian, and so you do not want to give them Lucian Braum. That's not a fun lane to go against, as anyone. But anyway, regardless, Ezreal Braum's fine. Ezreal versus Lucian is a really interesting matchup. I've played this one multiple times myself. Ezreal does not win the early game, but he doesn't actually really lose it either. It's probably the only AD carry in the game that does, like, even with Lucian. The cool thing is with the way Ezreal works is he outscales as well. So this is probably like the best matchup into Lucian that you can do. Like even Caitlyn, which is like really long range, and that's usually what Lucian struggles against, she can get jumped on. Same thing goes for Varus. But Ezreal can't be, and so I think Ezreal's probably the best matchup into Lucian that exists. In the laning phase. Obviously, if you want to pick like scaling, you could pick like Kai'Sa or like something like that scales really well and just beat them that way. But I'm talking about early lane phase. So Ezreal is probably decent. He has a decent chance at like actually beating the Lucian too if you're good enough. So it's a really good pick there. Braum obviously does really well into Lucian, blocks all of his damage. Braum into Alistar is historically obviously a really good matchup. The moment Alistar goes in, he's under risk of dying, which doesn't happen from a lot of supports. Braum puts down the passive and Alistar gets beaten down. It's really good. Post 6. Lucian and Alistar, they don't do super. Generally, their synergy isn't super great. Like, for example, if Lucian burns, if Alistar burns everything on one of the champions, like FNC XD, Braum or Ezreal, that means that Braum and Ezreal can now just promptly jump on the Lucian, and Lucian's too short range to actually do anything about it. He has one dash, it's not enough. So IG has to have more coordination to pull this off properly. And that's really common with all Alistar lanes, but some AD carries just do better with Alistar than others. Those that usually can get themselves out of a pickle when Alistar goes in at a bad time. Lucian's not one of them. He's too short range, one dash, not good enough. But anyway, in terms of archetypal analysis, I'd say this is a +1 for FNC, for sure. Yeah, you don't really do +2 for bot lane because even though there's 2 champions, there's also less room for error when you have 2 champions, so +1 is good enough. Mucus is the fun thing, by the way. Let's mute the mic. Okay, wonderful. So, Azir to Syndra. So, both of these champions actually fulfill really similar roles. They're zone control mages with a really similar trading pattern early game where Azir puts down a W, auto attacks, maybe Qs, and Syndra does autos and Qs and shit. It's pretty similar. Similar ranges, so this is exactly even. It's whoever's better. Neither champion has a huge advantage over the other. I think Rookie picking Syndra is easier to execute than an Azir for anyone. I think the champion is just mechanically easier. And add in the fact that Rookie is probably better at Syndra than Caps is at Azir. You know, that's a good thing for IG, but just purely on archetype, 0. Okay, it's pretty even. They match each other perfectly. Now, top lane for FNC is the same. So let's talk about how changing IG's top side is going to make a difference. Irelia into Urgot is not a great matchup for either side, but it is a much better matchup for Irelia than it is for like anyone else. Like Irelia has kill opportunities into the Urgot, because even though it's true that Urgot probably outpowers the Irelia at certain points, if he messes up at any point with how high his cooldowns are, he will have a potential of dying, which is really bad. Shy can cancel his W with her E. Shy can, you know, all in and do more damage faster than Bwipo can. The W is great in dealing with specifically Urgot's Q. Urgot's Q is historically one of his biggest sources of damage, and if you W that, then his damage output goes way lower. Something to keep in mind. Hopefully you're not all-inning the Urgot when he has his W up and can just smash you with it with, you know, going around using his passive. But in all, this is a +1 for Irelia, for sure. Irelia has around the same activation time as Urgot, with the exception of like Urgot's ult, but who the heck is launching that halfway across the map? But she has way better teamfight presence, and she has way better skirmishes. Just all in all, a better matchup for Irelia. Now, it is true that Urgot has lane priority, but Irelia is probably the only champion in the game that's okay with the enemy team having lane prio, because that gives her a highway to get to places. Much like Yasuo. Yasuo not as much, because Yasuo can't actually tank the minion wave, but Irelia can, because she's killing the minion wave as she's going through it. Big difference. When Yasuo dashes through a minion wave, notice how he's leaving all of them like half HP because he's not killing them. But when Irelia goes through a minion wave, especially post Tiamat, she's killing the wave, so that when she eventually engages with the enemy, there's no wave left behind. She has 4 stacks, she has Conqueror up, and there's no waves hitting her. That's why Irelia is so good. And that's why buffing her passive damage was so huge a couple of patches ago, because that enables that specific combo. If her passive damage is not very high, her stacks don't do that much damage, she can't kill the minions like that, and it's just a bad time. But that buff boosted her back into S tier status after she was S tier so many patches ago. Okay, Lee Sin into Gragas. This is a really interesting matchup. If you vertical, okay, as Lee Sin versus Gragas, Lee Sin has like a slight advantage. But if you fight together, right? If you decide to contest the Gragas on his own doesn't do super well until Lee Sin. No, wait. If you vertical, because Gragas is forced to build Runic Echoes as his first item, he's not allowed to build straight tank because nothing is efficient enough. I think mid-game, Lee Sin has a slight edge in terms of teamfight execution. If Gragas gets a lead, as he did this game, obviously it's going to be huge. But if you vertical and stall out the game, for the mid-game point of... for the mid-game, you're going to do better. But for late game, you're going to get completely outscaled. As Gragas builds into tank and has his body slam, you're going to do nothing against that. So mid-game, you have a slight edge, but late game, you're going to get completely outscaled. So I think verticaling is okay as long as you do something in that mid-game. With a composition like this, it's okay. I think it's okay. Because, you know, you have Tyr and Bork and Triforce or Iceborne on the Ezreal, which is the mid-game spike. You have the Urgot, which is mid-game champion. Azir, not so much a mid-game champion, but, you know, he does fine regardless. That, you can play it like that. However, if you play against the Gragas, you want to find 1v1s with him, because if you find 2v2s, Gragas is way better than Lee Sin in a 2v2 situation. Why? Gragas is a early game burst champion. However, he doesn't have enough burst, like, I guess, a champion like LeBlanc, who could one-shot you at level 3. Gragas does not have enough burst to do that. If he EQWs you, which is his natural combo, he is going to do around 60% of your HP bar with Electrocute. After that, he's got nothing for like 10 seconds. So obviously he's not doing well. So if you do that to the Lee Sin one-on-one, for example, You're going to do 60% of the Lee Sin's health bar, and then he's going to beat you to death in the next 10 seconds. There's nothing you can do about it because you've got no escapes, you've got nothing. So that's something you have to look out for. If you have a buddy nearby, though, and you chug someone 60% of their HP instantly, your buddy's going to finish him off, and suddenly Gragas is way better than Lee because Lee gets one shot, and everyone else gets one shot. That's Gragas' greatest strength is multi-purpose person skirmishes where you focus the same person. So, something to think about. Top we talked about, mid lane talking. Okay, let's get into the game. That's good enough archetype analysis. This is taking a while. This is a long video. Wow. Interesting. Reckless took teleport. I think it's fine. You generally don't want to go teleport into all in lanes, but it's fine. Okay, give myself a little time to rest my voice, gather my thoughts. Alright, so Brux is soloing red buff, which is really common. Keep in mind that red buff has negative armor, so AD champions clear it really easily, or relatively easier than everyone else. Gragas is starting Raptors, which is fine. He's probably going to go Raptors, Red Krugs for the level 6 clear path. Like I said, I was falling asleep at this point, so I don't remember too much. So, trades like this in the mid lane, they look pretty bad, but since both have 3 corrupting pots, this is like the equivalent of maybe, like, it's just one good trade. It's not going to end too much. Broxus spotted out. Reckless gets chunked out really hard. This is pretty standard play. Reckless just misplayed pretty hard. And he shouldn't be getting chunked out like that. Ezreal and Lucian have the same auto attack range, I believe. But Lucian has the added threat of adding in a Q afterwards, or a W, which is why Reckless lost that. You shouldn't be looking for auto trades unless you can find something else. Currently, Lee Sin, is he going for the double scuttle path? I think he is, yeah. So Ning is currently doing the red Raptors red Krugs, which is the fastest way to get to level 6. It's definitely one of the most efficient ways because you get to back after. You get to pick up a Hunter's Machete or Boots, which is Predator, and Pink Ward. And yeah, that's what he does. Or, yeah. And then go to his bot side, and his top side will come up Raptors first. So if you clear Gromp, Blue, and then Wolves, and then maybe gank or something like that, or just chill a little bit, your Raptors come up, and then your Krugs come up. So the timing is all really good in that clear path. Yeah, so pretty standard. Broxa takes he does something we call the double scuttle route. So at this stage in the game, even though Ning's clear path is really good and really efficient, I think it would have been okay for the Lee Sin just to power farm because he got both scuttle crabs, right? So if he clears his entire jungle, right, he's going to be like a full level above the Gragas from the 2 scuttle crabs, which I think is worth it in a matchup like this where I said you have a stronger early game and there's no lanes where you're actually looking to gank. Which lanes are gankable for Ning, on the other hand? Okay, so top lane is pretty gankable, but the wave position is not favored for the Gragas to gank. Mid lane is hard to gank when it's Azir. He's really far back. And of course, bot lane is really easy to gank, but you've got vision up the butt of everything. So I think it would have been better for Broxton to go for that, but instead he looks for something else. So, see, he just kind of wastes time here. And this is what, like 20 seconds of wasted time plus vision on Broxa? This is the kind of thing what I mean. Like, when you gank, when their summoners are up, high risk, low reward. Yeah. Like, imagine if Gragas was on the bot side there, sitting in that bush, right? And he counter ganks right there. Whew. That goes really poorly for them. Because Caps just uses E. If Rookie has both Flash and Heal, not a great position to be in. So in general, I think that pathing error was pretty big from Lee, because with that 20 seconds, he could have cleared both Gromp and Wolves, and then gone to Raptors, then Krugs, and just been super far ahead of the Gragas. Yep. The CS lead created here that the casters are mentioning is not necessarily because of the matchup, but because Reckless took the poor trades in the other game, so keep that in mind. The matchup itself is not guaranteed to go like this for the reasons I stated earlier. Archetypally, it's not guaranteed to go this poorly. Yeah, this is what I mean by, like, when Aurelia doesn't have lane priority, she's perfectly happy with that because her threat level increases the more minions and stuff are available. And this was just careless from Bwipo. Like, this is why, like, shoving in like this is just not, against an Aurelia, it just doesn't work. Because you give her more minions to jump on you with, and it guarantees her highway to you. And when you're against a jungler like this, you don't have vision of the river. You have vision of the tri-bush. A tri-bush vision doesn't help you at all. Because even if he were in the tri-bush, right, and if he was coming from the tri-bush, he would have Predator active. By the time he shows in your vision, you're already dead. Because as you're hobbling away and Aurelia jumps on you, canceling your E, and you're like, oh, I gotta get away, and oh, I'm stunned by the Aurelia E. Oh, I'm gonna flash. Oh, I'm running away. Oh, I got jumped on. So it's like, I'm not in a good spot here. Anyway, this was well played by everyone involved. Bwipo flashes really early. I think the reason why is there's no situation where this flash is good. One thing that he could have done is tried and, like, the moment Gragas started his E animation, try and flash the E flash. That's probably his only chance at living, but he screwed himself by being that far up in the first place. Like, at some point, okay, you guys might be asking, okay, well, how do you deal with that? You're shoving up to get lane prio. What do you do when you're under threat of jungle pressure? There's a couple things you can do, okay? One, you can die like Bwipo. Two, that's kind of rough. Two, you can forcefully shove in the wave and, like, push it in all the way by using all of your abilities on the wave and looking for a back. The third is you can just concede the wave. And vast majority of the time, if you concede the wave, in most situations, it's going to slow push back to you eventually. But you're going to lose like 10 CS. But he just didn't respect IG gank potential at all. Especially since they knew that Gragas had went for this clear path. I'm pretty sure they knew. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they knew. That means he has his boots with Predator. And even if he didn't, he would have backed and gotten boots already. So it's just disrespectful. They had no vision of the river. And yeah, so this is what happens when you shove the wave into Aurelia. You give him a highway to get to. Yeah, so his only chance at living here was the moment Ning starts his E animation, he had to flash to predict the E flash. Even then, that's just like... Ning, his Gragas looks a little rusty. He should have EQ flashed there. I'm not entirely sure why he E flashed. But that's just like a Gragas specific thing. Gragas is probably one of my best mechanical junglers just because I spent like 100 games learning all of his combos and things like that. As a Riven main, doing those kinds of things are the most fun. So this right here is a fantastic usage of something that very people know up to like master, like high masters, which is vision usage. Ugh, what the hell did I just say? Is that English? Vision usage. So you know, like those 200, 300, 900,000 IQ plays where they're like, they put a ward into the Baron pit that doesn't get spotted by the pink ward. It's like perfect. Or like they're doing Baron at like the perfect spot where it can't be seen. Yeah, so this is another example of that, and this is the most important for junglers specifically. He sat just outside of the curtain of fog that Bwipo had access to. That is just amazing to do. Yeah, so just stepping up before the Lee Sin is in position to try and counter. But even if he were to counter, what are you going to do against a level 6 Aurelia? And this is what I mean, like draft-wise, like that Aurelia is just so good into Urgot. Just one advantage and she's just going to roll him just completely. That champion does probably the best into Urgot out of all of the common top lane play champions. Really greedy play here. This is really common. They'll be like, we're losing the fight. We need to win the fight. Even though the enemy didn't use anything. If the enemy uses something, you drop low. You do have an opportunity to use your own abilities and equalize the HP advantage. If the enemy dropped you low, but they didn't use all of their things, if you try and you do the same idea, this is going to happen to you, and you're going to take a lot of damage. Hillsong forced to burn his shield, and now he has to back, and it's just... If they just backed out instantly, he would have left with half HP, and maybe he could have stayed. But, you know, you get the idea. So mid lane is like perfectly even, as I predicted. Right after he clears these 5 minions, he's gonna be 49 to 51. It's almost perfectly even. They both have 3 corrupting pots, like I said. It's exact even. So as you can see, like archetypal analysis is good. For competitive play, for solo queue play, because of archetypal analysis, I can calculate the probability of my win percentage in solo queue pretty much give or take 5 to 10%. That's too much. Like 2 to 5% dead on. I can calculate what my percentage likelihood of winning is, regardless of players, and that's through archetypal analysis. Yeah, so it's a good skill to have. It's not, is it like super important? I mean, it's all macro, right? If you understand the macro behind it, you naturally can do archetypal analysis, and of course the macro itself is important to being good at the game, but the analysis itself isn't going to be super helpful for the vast majority of the time. Yep. That was a impressive attempt too. My favorite part of that is even if he lands it, what's going to happen? Because Weeple has no flash and there's no one else nearby. So he knocks this guy out of tower. He's currently tanking the tower. Rookie has flash. Or no, he did it after the flash, so he knows he has the flash. But like Rookie has heal. I'm not entirely sure what he was going for there. I think like I said, the stress is just getting to them. FNC was just like, oh god. And that's usually what happens in a best of 5. Whoever wins the first game is morale boost, and the other person that doesn't win the game or the other team is like a big morale loss. Okay, this is a good play to comment on. Boom. Okay, what was Ning doing here? A lot of Twitch chat anyway, not you guys. Hopefully not you guys. We're like, holy shit, Ning misses ult. What a fucking troll. What he was trying to do here is predict Hylissang's flash, because they knew that Braum had flash because he didn't use it ever. So that's what he was trying to do. So why is that a bad thing? Well, it's actually not a bad thing at the moment. In fact, that's probably the best play at the moment to try and predict the flash. Because it does make sense that Hylissang would try and flash away. What he should have done, though, is add the Gragas barrel to the CC chain, which is like Gragas 101. Like I said, Ning just doesn't look super comfortable on Gragas. Even his play later in the game that was like super PogChamp was just super basic. That was just him being a good player. But in terms of champion strength, it's not very high. So here's the idea. So one of the biggest things with a Gragas, so Gragas ultimate is like an AoE Lee Sin kick, right? Well, Lee Sin kick is CCs them when the moment you press R and you can direct them in what direction you want to go. Gragas ult doesn't do that. They can flash the ult, they can dodge the ult, yada yada. It's an AoE skill shot. So the only thing that guarantees an ultimate hit is right here. So what they could have done, right, is as this knockup comes up, wait, the Braum ultimate only blocks the first projectile, but projectiles after that, are they still blocked? Yeah, they are. So what he needed to do was actually ult before the Braum shield came up, because otherwise it's going to knock the Braum away. I think that's what he was trying not to do. The moment that he saw his E hit the Braum, without the Braum putting up the shield, means that he should have ulted instantly. Hold on, can we go back to that? Holy shit, I went way too far back. Nope, that's level 7. Here it is. So I'll show you what I mean. So he was correct in not ulting after the knockup because the Braum shield was still up, and I believe it knocks back. Okay, right here. So boom, right there. You see that? Wait, so he's stunned right now, right? The moment he hits that E and Braum is not having that shield up, he should ult right here. Braum gets knocked all the way over here, right? And he's going to get knocked up by the Alistair and the Syndra. Now, it is true that he can flash and jump away to caps, maybe, if they don't have enough damage to finish the guy. But, you know, it's something you have to deal with. At least you get a flash. It's better than not getting a flash, which is what they did. I think they probably would have had enough damage to kill him. Yeah, they would have had enough damage. So that's what he should have done. For all you Gragas players out there, I guess. It's a really good play from Draxyr here. The ultimate was a bit early, considering that they knew Ning didn't have flash from the top lane excursion. There was no reason to kick him away that early. He thought that they had enough damage, but there's no reason to do it because he has no way out. He just uses E, and that's a pretty long cooldown in the early game. So, yeah, it was a pretty big misplay from Draxyr. It was a good Q, but then after that, he jumped the gun on the ultimate. But that's not a huge mistake. I think anyone would have made that mistake there. It's one of the most commonly seen errors. Yeah, so this is the exact same kind of mistake that Caps made earlier on Aurelia, where he knew that the Camille just came from topside and knew what direction she was going in and didn't respect it. Same thing happened to Shy here. He knew that Draxyr was mid lane. He knew that Draxyr went topside because he went through the tower vision. So, you know, this is just super greedy to go for. He probably thought that the Lee Sin was going to go for the red buff, but there's no reason to assume there.
All right. Anyway, let's speed this up. So the lanes have gone about as expected. Aurelia is doing well. Gragas versus Lee Sin does well in multi-person skirmishes, which is what has happened. Remember, like, the Gragas just bursted down the Weepo. What is Lee Sin going to do about it? He's not going to do anything about it. Syndra versus Zir, like I mentioned, is going to be even, although the events of the last few minutes have made it less so even. And of course the bot lane is favored for Lucian Alistar. I did give it to Reckless and Hylissang, but it all stems from that level 1, level 2 misplay that Reckless made, where he took 60% of his HP and damage, which is really strange. And now, of course, Jackie and Balon have the advantage. Yeah, so Reckless just didn't play this matchup correctly, and I gave them the advantage mostly because they outscale as well. So archetypally, you do include that, even though it's mostly an early game analysis. You do include like some idea of scaling. Like, it wouldn't make sense if you gave like Caitlyn versus Vayne like +8, because Vayne does outscale eventually. So you do want to include that as like a late game thing, and it is like a synergistic late game analysis. But yeah, this was just greedy on the side of the Shy. He does win this all in, so I think that's why he went for it. But he had plenty of opportunities to do that later. Yep, as the casters are mentioning. It's essentially the same thing that I was talking about. Alright, let's go ahead and speed this up. I want to get to game 3, because that's the one I haven't watched. Shy plays textbook top lane, by the way. He shoves in top lane with Tiamat and goes and moves to the other parts of the map. And other people were mentioning that that he's like the only one that does that. This is a style. It's not exactly the roaming style that exists, but it's like a derivative of it. It's like map pressure top lane style. There are 2 different derivations of top lane map pressure style. There's the one where you invade the enemy jungler, which is like Dakar's thing, or when you go and gank other lanes, which is like my kind of thing, and a couple other top laners do the same. And then the vast majority of top laners just sit top lane and try and kill their opponent over and over again. Yeah, so that's like the Ascension style. What they do though, like, even though like good players, even though they play the Ascension style where they try and kill their top lane or like get pressure in their lane, what they'll do is they'll like clear the wave and push it in, and then go and place vision. But like roaming style, like myself and other players that play like me, we go all the way to mid lane, or like all the way down to Scuttle Crab, and we do the things there. We don't just place a ward and leave. So that's the difference. And of course, then there's like the full roaming style, which is where you like go fucking all the way down to bot lane. That's a different thing. Okay. Pretty textbook play. Bwipo dies again. There's nothing he can do against Gragas Aurelia when they're that strong. Yeah, this game is pretty lost. Yeah. Mid lane doesn't have a super big chance to carry. The one matchup that needed to do well was the top lane matchup, and it's not. Because there are no real answers to the Aurelia on the side of FNC. There's no Lissandra. The Braum does kind of function as an equivalent. The Azir wall helps, but there's no Lissandra. That's no other way to put it. There's no, like, I'm going to shut you down. And not even shut you down in a team fight, but like, you got to shut down. When you have an S tier champion like Aurelia, you've got to shut down the champion in the early game. You ever notice, like, Akali, right? Who's another S tier champion at the moment. And it's just so oppressive to play against. It's just one of the reasons why is you have to shut her down the early game, and to shut down Aurelia in the early game. Oh, this was a great ultimate by Ning, by the way. Bwipo had no chance. Bwipo should never have gone in, but he dies for it. But anyway, it's hard to shut down the champion in the early game, and that's why S tier champions are so annoying, because they're like, you're strong at every point. What do I do against you? Yeah, it is rough. Playing against S tier champions, which are quote unquote overpowered, is rough. Now, the answer to the question of how do I do it is you find mistakes of the players, not weaknesses in the champion. For example, like, there are innate weaknesses in every champion that are not S tier that you can take advantage of. For example, one of the most common mistakes like a Vayne player might make, I'm using Vayne a lot, for example. Why am I using Vayne a lot? Anyway, she tumbles in when she shouldn't be. Like, boom, champion mistake. Like, go. Like, she's short range, so you take advantage of the fact that she's short range. She tumbles, she has no tumble, she has no mobility. She's short range, you take a fight. So for a player mistake, for example, like playing Akali, imagine like they just shroud at a bad time. Like they shroud when the enemy jungler is nearby, the shroud runs out, and then you gank them while the shroud's down, something like that. So it would be like a player mistake. Or like missing your ultimate, for example. Or like mismanaging your energy, something like that.
Anyway, great smite from Ning, bad smite from Draxyr. It was like 400 something, which is below what the smite does at this point, I think. So it's just late reaction timing. Anyway, pretty standard play here. Yeah, at this point, I'm not entirely sure what FNC's hope is. They have everything going against them, including scaling. The only thing that falls off on the enemy team's side is the Lucian, but the only time that Lucian's going to fall off is when Azir starts doing enough damage to 1v2 the Syndra and the Lucian. That's not going to be for like 30 minutes. So, yeah, rough time. That ultimate from Dracula was pretty interesting. Considering they had vision of the bush, he just missed. Yeah, but at this point, I think the game's pretty much over. And of course, IG shows us another masterclass. Caps had a nice flash there, though, for sure. And then, of course, this is the movement from the Shy and the quote-unquote progress play from Ning, which was decent, but not anything special. But the Shy being there is what seriously solidified that. Ning didn't even have to do that. Okay, so at this point, another masterclass from IG, how to end the game in a very short amount of time, okay? Like I said, send me a message if you want me to review these parts of the games of how they did that. But like I said, mostly intuitive. All right, round stretch, third game. Obviously, Fnatic doesn't reverse sweep. In fact, they just lose. So let's go and see. I haven't watched any of this. So pick and ban phase is foreign to me. I have no idea what champions were played in the third game. I know Aatrox was played for the Shy. The only reason why is because I asked if he played Riven. I wanted him to play Riven, man. Because if he plays Riven, then I'm pretty sure the rules dictate if you play one game of a champion, you can pick that champion for a skin. I was like, world's fucking Riven. Here we go. But I don't think he did. Kind of tragic. Maybe if Camille gets a world skin, I'll be happy. Right, they got the Victor, which is decent. But here's the problem. Victor, as a champion in the recent times, especially Victor top lane, I don't know why teams are doing this. And the coaches, okay, let me make this straight. I think I'm a good coach. I think I have challenger macro, but these coaches are on a whole another level for me. So any criticisms I make is not a criticism necessarily of the coach, because they're obviously way more informed and way higher than I am in terms of league analysis. But I can criticize the decision with what information I do have. So Victor top, from what I understand, and I'm just gonna, that phrase, from what I understand, is gonna be like implied in everything I say, obviously. Victor top is a counter pick. The reason why Victor top came into existence is because he's really good to a lot of the meta champions. Aatrox, Urgot, Sion. He's really good into these champions. He has mobility, he can kite them out. But there are champions that he doesn't do well against, like Aurelia, Camille, like Riven sometimes. You all know of the 016 Ascension episode. Like, there are fighters that do well into Victor top. I'm not entirely sure why people are first picking it. I guess it is true that you can flex it to mid lane, maybe 80 carry, which is XD. But I just don't. Victor mid wasn't played before. Why now? You know what I mean? Like, I don't see it. So mostly as a top lane pick, Camille's picked again for Ning, and of course Aatrox for top lane. Aatrox into the Victor, so he's challenging Soaz into that quote-unquote counter matchup for the Shy. So there's that. I think Aatrox has like counterplay available though. Like, that's the thing. Like, when you have counter picks for your champions, generally those counter picks win like really hard. But Aatrox has counterplay into Victor. Like, if you play well enough, you can do well into the Victor. You hit your Qs, you're gonna do a lot. So, not entirely sure. That Victor pick is kind of strange. Xayah Thresh. This is anti-synergy if I've ever seen it. You have a champion, right, that does like decent wave clear, and then you have a champion that has no wave clear. Then you have a champion that looks for picks. Then you have a champion that likes to do consistent damage, and the burst is okay on Xayah, but it's not like the best of all of them. And you have a champion that has an innate escape. Then you have a champion that has a power budget devoted to a lantern. It's kind of like, all right, well, what is that bot lane draft? I think that Thresh was picked into the Rakan, but like Morgana was open. Why not just pick Morgana? Like, that's just as good into the Rakan. I don't know, the Thresh, maybe Hylissang just really wanted to play Thresh, but Thresh into Rakan is on its own like not even that good. Because in the mid-late game, if Thresh gets RW'd by the Rakan and there's anyone nearby, That's going to be a bad time for the Thresh, because he's not going to be able to get his Aftershock off. He's not innately a tanky champion, and it's just going to go poorly for him. Like, it's not a counter matchup in the normal sense. Like, if it's a Morgana, though, on the other hand, you can see how much of a counter matchup that really is. Anyway, I'm going to let it play. Mute my mic. Alright, so let's go ahead and do archetypal analysis of this game, shall we? So, apparently it wasn't Aatrox into Victor. They picked the Urgot, which Urgot into Aatrox is actually 55-45 Urgot, I believe. It's because counterplay does exist with Aatrox. He does have the range to deal with the Urgot and actually even gain advantages if he hits all 3 of his Qs and Urgot mispositions. On the other hand, though, Urgot is probably easier to execute and being able to dodge those things, so we'll see. But anyway, Camille to Jax, we'll talk about that one last. That's a really interesting one. That's usually a top lane matchup traditionally. In the jungle, it does change. Galio versus Victor. Let me think. This is not a matchup I'm super familiar with, but doing a basic archetypal analysis, I'd say it's pretty even for both sides. I'd probably just call this one a 0. Yeah, I'd probably just call this one a 0. All right, so Kai'Sa Rakan into Xayah Thresh. Kai'Sa into Xayah is basically dead even. You have the offensive AD carry into the defensive AD carry archetype. Cancels each other out. Thresh into Rakan. Technically, Thresh has an advantage in the early game because Rakan is not a very good laner, and Thresh does have an advantage in that regard. Thresh is very good into Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa doesn't have any like really good way to avoid the flay, things like that. I'd probably give this one to Fnatic's bot lane. So top lane we'll call it even, mid lane we'll call it even, AD carry we'll call it FNC, and for the mid lane or for the jungle. Okay, so this is an interesting matchup. So in the top lane, Jax is one of the most common counter matchups picked into Camille. Why? You might say. Well, first of all, Camille does not have enough damage to deal with Jax post 6, like to kill him. Even if you're really fed, it's really hard to kill the Jax. Like, you can't ever E into the guy, because what he'll do is you press R before your E hits you. Then he'll tank the damage, right? He'll press E and just beat your ass down. And there's nothing that Camille can do after her E is gone, so she's in a lot of trouble. The one counterplay she does have is to ult his E, but then his jump is going to come back in 5, and your jump is going to come back in 8. You can kind of see how this comes badly. However, in jungle, it completely changes because Camille's not interested in fighting the Jax. In fact, she's only interested in ganking, which is what Camille jungle does. Jax, on the other hand, his ganks are not as good. His range is really linear and really small. His jump range is, it's not small, but for jungle pressure champions like Elise and Lee Sin and Nidalee, it's a pretty small range. So Jax has this disadvantage in in ganking. He has the advantage in clear. So one thing that Jax jungle can do to destroy Camille jungle is, one, don't allow the Camille to get any ganks off. If Camille ganks the lane and Jax is there, that goes pretty badly for the Camille generally, because now you're stuck in a situation where you have to fight the Jax as Camille. That's not what you want to do. You do not want to be in that situation, for the same reason as the top lane matchup. But if she gets a gank off, and generally she moves around the map much faster than he does, mostly because she's also not as interested in clearing, it's going to be very hard for Jax to deal with the varied map pressure of the Camille jungle, so that means that FNC has to play way safer. However, if FNC can come out of this lane phase 0-0-0, okay, and Jax has like 30 CS up on the Camille, I'm pretty sure they just automatically win the game. Because Jax doesn't do super well in the Galio, admittedly. The taunt does counter him pretty hard, but everyone else he does pretty decently into, and it's just going to be really rough for IG to deal with this problem, especially when they have a 4v5 on the side. I mentioned time and time again, Camille does not scale. Same thing applies to this game. It's no different. However, there is one thing that does make Camille scale more than she usually does. That's the interaction between Hextech Ultimatum and Galio's Ultimate, okay? So when someone is ulted in Hextech Ultimatum, if they don't have any way of dodging an ability like invulnerability or stasis or something like that, they will get hit by Galio ult. That's all there is to it. You cannot dodge the Camille Galio combo. It's not possible. So that's something they have to look out for. Of course, Rakan going to be charming people up in there as well. Kai'Sa with the offensive. In terms of synergistic analysis, IG has got this in the bag, as always. It looks like their drafts are always pretty synergistic. In terms of solo lanes and like solo individual matchups, I probably give it to FNC. You guys can probably see a trend here. Now, the cool thing is when you draft a composition like this, in lower levels of competitive play, FNC's kind of draft will win every single time because it's all about who wins the early game, and generally skill differentials are big enough where the early game champions will win the early game and therefore the game. Snowball effect, the butterfly effect, yada yada. However, I think IG have the better players, so drafting this late game composition is equalizing their power level with FNC so that they're keeping on par with FNC in the early game while having a better mid game, late game. This reminds me a lot of like old season SKT, right? Where they would build these super late game compositions and just beat the enemy team because they wouldn't be good enough to beat SKT in the early game, even with these matchup differentials, and then just roll them mid late game with their team fighting and their synergy and yada yada yada. So I think that's what's happening. IG is channeling their Korea here pretty hard. So this is a draft I haven't seen yet, so I'm pretty excited for this. Let's get into it. All right, so Balon is like 007 right here. It's pretty special. It's pretty risky for Balon to go for this, actually. I was going to say. It's pretty risky. I'm pretty sure he just dies here. Yeah, I don't know what that was. I think they're just getting cocky after they won 2-0. There is no reason to W forward like that, mostly because, like, what are you going to do even if you... like, even if this is a good thing, like, your W isn't up for, like, 13 or 14 seconds, if I believe correctly. Even if Caps doesn't show up here, you're going to have to flash. That's just a bad situation to be in. Oh, Bwipo is swapped out for Soaz, which I think was a call they should have made in the first game after they saw how hard Bwipo got smashed in a counter matchup. They just, I don't know why they didn't swap that out first and give Soaz some time to warm up. One of the things that Soaz said on Reddit was that he just wasn't warmed up and was struggling because of it. Remember what I told you, Urgot has a counter matchup sort of 55-45, but Aatrox has counterplay. When you have a better, even if Soaz isn't that much worse than the Shy, even if he's like equal skill level, the Shy is warmed up, he's ready to go, he's been playing for a while. This is gonna be a rough matchup for Soaz. Anyway, this is the vertical jungle coming out from Camille, which is pretty standard. Camille generally doesn't like to. Wait, no, not vertical. I'm trolling. I think all the mucus in my nose is trolling me pretty hard. This gank from FNC was ambitious. I'm pretty sure this is going to go poorly. Yeah, surprise, surprise, it does go poorly. Ning's Camille is... I said it for the first game, but it is just doesn't look good. I think his Gragas looks better than his Camille, but mostly just Camille's harder. That E-Flash was nowhere near landing. But anyway, this is a really good play. Yeah, actually, Broxton just might be... Oh, Kellisang is here to save the day. Yeah, Broxton would have just died there. Invading a Jax is probably the best thing you can do. So even though Jax has really good clear times, he has really good ganks, counter ganks, not really good ganks. He actually doesn't do super well at clearing some of the camps. Like clearing wolves, he does fine in. Clearing Kugs, he does fine in. Clearing raptors, he struggles a little bit. But clearing single target camps, he can only dodge so many autos, and then he's going to get beaten pretty hard. His clear speed fixes itself after Tiamat if he goes for that, or even like skirmishers or skulkers. But pre-early game, it's pretty bad. So invades like that is really good, especially after Jax went for a level 2 dive, by the way, on IG. What is that? Look at this. Level 2 dive. Red, blue, bot lane dive. This makes no sense. Like, how does this ever go well for you? How would you ever have enough damage to deal with heal and double flash? Alright, let's go ahead and watch that, because I'm playing on 2 times speed, and this is even hard for me to figure out what the hell's going on. Yeah, this gank made 0 sense. I don't understand this at all. Especially since you know the top lane has teleport. Or mid lane has teleport. Everyone has teleport. How does this ever go well for you? There's a minion wave coming. I don't understand this play. Alright, here we go. Oh, damn. They actually didn't play that too poorly. Caps just had a really nice gravity well. Yeah, that was well played by both teams, actually. That might be like the cleanest exchange I've seen all tournament. Or not tournament, all series. Ooh, look at that. So that's a really good thing. When you have mobility spells and you don't have mana, one thing you can do against champions that do have mana is when they use their damage on you, you just use your mobility spell to dodge it. So like Riven comes to mind, Aatrox as well. One thing that Aatrox did here is if he got hit by that Q, Endurance Shield will mitigate by the damage by quite a bit. He'll drop to half for a while, and while he's at half, he has 0 pressure. So by Eing the Q there, he actually saved himself a lot of heartache. That's a really good play, actually. That kind of play is why probably the Shy is the best top player in the world right now. Yep, that's a really clean flash E. Shy is in a bit of trouble here. I don't think he has any way out of this. Although that's a testament to how much Aatrox damage actually does. Broxah was full HP and dropped to 30%. But that's also a level 5 Aatrox into Broxah. Okay, so this is a really good gank by Broxah. Here's the reason why. Aatrox isn't level 6 yet. The moment Aatrox hits level 6, he presses R and just waltzes out. There's nothing you can do about it. Because he's going to get to like halfway to his turret by the time you guys hit him to death. And then he's going to respawn at his turret. There's nothing you can do. So this is a really good gank. When you're against champions that hit certain abilities that do really well in avoiding ganks, you generally want to prioritize ganking them before 6. Cassidy, Zillion, you know, the champions that have something that gives them an easy way out of ganks. What else comes to mind? There's a lot. Kaisa ultimate, Xayah ultimate. You guys gotta get the idea. Ari ultimate. So when those champions are pre-6, those are generally the times you want to gank them. But I don't know, Jack's just struggling. Being behind a Camille like this in levels is unlucky. But he's gonna catch up. Camille's clear time is tragic. Camille's like a ganking only jungler. It's crazy. Yep, so Fnatic isn't giving up, which is good. But draft-wise, this is a rough one. Like, they have to win this early game really hard. That gank level 2 did not do them any favors. I mean, they're winning early game now. But the thing is, like, the Shy is going to do fine. He's not going to get rolled over. He's probably going to keep up. And currently, Rookie is winning after having his enemy have a kill up. Although the kill, admittedly, was on Baolon at level 1. But he was winning when that kill gave... When he had it... Basically, Cap started the game with a kill, and Rookie's still beating his ass. So, that's something to mention. This is Camille in a nutshell. Hillsang has no flash. The moment you're like, okay, Hillsang has no flash, you just kill his ass. There's nothing to do there. Gank the lanes. Remember, type 2 ganks. High reward, low risk. Gank the lanes with no flash. Yeah, I knew he was going to get out. Star doesn't travel fast enough. No way that Shy gets this, right? There's no way that Shy gets this, right? What a beast if he gets this. Oh my god, really? Wow. So this is an example of the roaming style that I play. You don't see this very often, but top laners coming down for that kind of thing, that's like a solo queue thing. I'm impressed that that he's doing that. Yeah. Electrocute, interestingly enough, a Riven main. Yeah, the Shy used to be a Riven main. Actually, Aatrox is pretty similar to Riven. We were all crying about that Riven players when Aatrox was designed, like new Aatrox. It's like, it's just Riven. He's two abilities and a jump and a slam and dash and everything. Ultimate that gives him AD or something. It's a Riven. Yeah. But that's a really good roam. Like I said, that's different. There's different playstyles there. He had the opportunity to try and push for more of a lead in the top side, but decided to go for the kill mid lane instead. This is what we define as playstyle. So a lot of times the word playstyle is misused by the vast majority of players. Playstyle is like, oh, this is my style of play. I like to do this. For the vast majority of players that are not like challenger, even masters players, don't really fall into this. You're not good enough at the game to have a style because your style is just quote-unquote suboptimal. That's your style, suboptimal style. All the mistakes that you're making add up to a style that's just filled with errors. The only people that are close enough to optimal play, not to say that they are anywhere near optimal play, that's reserved for like AI whenever that's created for League of Legends, they have the ability to choose between two different options that net them about the same results if you do like a cost-benefit analysis. So because they're not making all of the variety of errors that we usually make, or players that are not challenger make. So the idea is the playstyle there for the Shy is instead of fighting the Urgot top lane and trying to do wave things, he decided to gank bot or gank mid and then concede some pressure top lane. Ooh, this is a really nice knockout from Baolon. Yep, but that Lantern's gonna equalize it instantly. Broxah is like gonna say hi. With the pink ward in that bush, I'm actually pretty curious on why they didn't go, like why he didn't sit in that bush and wait. It's kind of strange, actually, that he didn't do that. Oof, they saw a glimpse of the guy over the wall. Oh, I'm not entirely sure why he didn't wait on that pink ward and just tell Caps to abandon the ship mid lane, because that's pink warded. That could have resulted in something, actually. Obviously, IG could have been aware of something like that, but that very well might have worked. They would have to make sure they wouldn't telegraph of it. Yep. So take a look at this. IG in their chat, 100%. They have Victor's flash timed somewhere. So they're like, okay, Victor has no flash. Let's go ahead and gangbang the Victor. That's exactly what they're looking to do. Interestingly enough, that Aatrox build looks like the Riven build. I haven't seen that in a while. There's something called sunk cost fallacy, which is a fantastic example of IG not falling into sunk cost fallacy. When you spend a lot of time mid lane looking for a gank and it doesn't pan out, a lot of players and teams will be like, we spent so much time already, might as well keep spending time. That's sunk cost fallacy. Generally, if it's a bad idea, it will never stop being a bad idea. So, wow, Jackie Love has some balls. Like, Hillsong didn't do anything to respond there. No flay, no hook, but Jackie just face checked him. Interesting. Probably because Hillsong thought Ning was near. That's a bad hook. That's a bad hook. That's exactly why like Thresh into Rakan is just not very good. Because like Rakan does that post 6, and what is Thresh gonna do when there's no aftershock available? Soaz still doesn't have ult available. Has to flash. Yep. And this just looks like IG outdrafting again. The only chance for FNC to win this was the early game, and after misplays, I mean here's the thing, like they got the kill on Balon, but Caps isn't good enough to push for a lead onto Rookie, and Soaz, they did well to kill the Shy, but the Soaz is not doing well enough in the matchup on his own to actually turn that into anything, because if you're losing, that one kill is not going to suddenly make you stop losing. Oh, that's a good Infernal Drake pickup, though. Takes advantage of Ning backing. But now Ning has Warrior completed. So it's kind of a good luck. Wow, that's ambitious from Ning. What the hell? Oh my god. Oh, there's an example of a Hextech Ultimatum, but there's Stasis. See, I mentioned the Stasis before. The taunt comes through, but Soaz is on the other side. Balon is here, but he doesn't have ultimate, so there's nothing to find here. Kaisa ulted in on the other side, but they didn't kill Caps, so Reckless and Caps will survive. Now, Camille's in a lot of trouble, and that's why Camille Jungle's not very good. He's going to die instantly, so that's an example of Camille being really bad. Aatrox hits a lot of damage there and gets the 1-for-1. And now Hillsong has no flash, so he's in a lot of trouble here after he gets yanked back by the Aatrox W. Now Caps is going to maybe fall to the Shy. Oh, Shy actually directs his Q backwards because he thinks that Caps won't get hit by it. That's an interesting choice. But so far, that's like a 2-for-3. So that's still a win for IG, even after such a botched engage from Ning. So that's a great example of like the interaction between Camille ult and Galio ult. They should never have done that combo on someone they knew had stopwatch. Oh, rip Hillsong. Oh, they're BMing. Jackie flash forward. And this game's over. Another masterclass in closing out a game, isn't it? Alright, I think it's been long enough. This is a multi-hour analysis. Pretty comprehensive, I think. Except for like the closing out portions of the games, but I think I covered like the most important parts. I kind of got tired towards game 3. Also, like I didn't watch game 3, so I don't really have what's in my mind to talk about before, like I did for game 1 and game 2. But hopefully that's has some interesting information. I kind of did this as an experiment more than like an actual video I wanted to have in my resume. But yeah, it was I would much rather prefer to have like the VOD itself. Yeah, I think he didn't queue towards the Caps because Caps shield might have allowed him to survive. Yeah, that was just a rough fight. I think they should never have taken more They should have all backed out at the same time, but part of them wanted to fight, and then part of them got hit by the Kaisa ultimate, where Caps got completely destroyed by the Kaisa. Yeah, at this point, masterclass time. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free and absolutely, I urge you to let me know and I'll answer, because that will also help me figure out what to talk about for the next videos. This kind of VOD review of games that in this format, and watching like a screen, a casted screen, I'm not super familiar with, so it's kind of strange for me, and also I didn't spend too much time preparing, but I think I did okay for my first try. All right, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.